Hi, Holly. Can hear you.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Is that light behind me too bright? I'm having a hard time finding the right place in my house to do this.
It's not bad. We see your face just fine, but
Okay.
I mean, it's bright behind you, but it just looks like you have a halo.
It came with this job.
Yeah. I probably have these little. Yeah.
Holly, do you want me to make you the host?
If you wouldn't mind. And then I think going forward, let's talk about how to do that piece of the whole thing.
There we go. And there's Mayor Angelo. Perfect.
Great.
Hey, hello, everybody.
Hello. See Trustee Lowell. Oh, there he is. Yay. Hello.
While we're waiting, I just came from the food pantry at Wednesday afternoon thing. And while
Yeah.
we're doing the food pantry, the two CEMEX representatives showed up, the plant director, I forget his name, the German guy, and then their public relations director with a $15,000 check for leaf.
Wow, that's
Beautiful.
Oh,
Great.
awesome.
I may make an announcement of that the next time we have trustee reports or something at a regular meeting. I may
Yeah.
give them credit because it was kind of unexpected. I don't think Lori was there. She didn't even know it was really coming today, but they showed up with this check. So great.
And
That's fantastic.
can you say who it was again who made that donation?
I mean CEMEX. It was
Oh, okay.
and who's their community relations guy?
Oh,
Mhm.
gosh. Yeah, it's been a while since I talked to them.
Yes, they just showed up with a big check because some of their workers,
how's Lori?
utilize Leaf. Leaf provides some social services for people that work at CEMEX, and he said they hadn't had a single employee test positive, and they've been doing regular tests, and so nobody out there has missed any work, which is great.
That's awesome.
Phenomenal.
That's great.
That's great news. So the fire chief can only attend for an hour. So I'd like to try to get some feedback from him. So I don't know how we want to arrange the capability for him to be able to address the board, maybe with some suggestions or other input that he might have. So I guess we can see how the public input part of the agenda goes, and then maybe give JJ the capability to be able to talk if he indeed joins the meeting.
Mayor Angelo, I was going to make a motion to amend the agenda to move public participation until after the presentation that we do, so that, because not everybody gets to read the packet in time, so that people can respond to it. So that might do the job if you decide to call on Chief Hoffman first.
Well, let's see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. We can see how it goes in regard to how long it takes you to make your presentation, you and Kenyon, and maybe go into the local businesses reopening master plan, and then maybe go into the town parks plan. And I'm sure that we'll get some feedback from Sergeant Christ and maybe even Fire Marshal Hoffman at that point. We'll just have to see how it goes, because I don't want the fire marshal to attend the meeting and then not get to speak. That's not polite, to say the least. So, but let's just play it by ear. Let's see who we are. Who are we missing? We are
Trustee
missing.
Miller and Trustee Caravas, but
He's here. Trustee Caravas just hooked up. Thank you. Good to see you, sir. Jocelyn Farrell, a belated happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're the same.
Couple of raging Tauruses.
Oh, boy.
We're waiting for Trustee Miller.
Who's older? Don't answer that, Mayor.
Oh, boy. I'm going to get you for that. There's Trustee Miller. She's online now. Everybody ready to go?
Sure.
I'll call the Lions Board of Trustees a special meeting of May 20th, 2020 to order. Could we have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Angelo,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Present.
Trustee Caravas,
Here.
Trustee Rogan,
Here.
Trustee Waugh,
Here.
Trustee Miller,
Present.
and Trustee Lowell.
Here.
Could we please all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A time for a reflective moment of silence and dedication to now 95,000 Americans that have died, their families, the medical workers and the frontline people. Thank you. Item 3, approve the agenda. Trustee Rogan.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to move the public comment portion to after the after item 5.1 in order to facilitate public input for people who haven't had a chance to look at that.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to amend the agenda as stated. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
and Trustee Lowell.
Aye. We'll proceed now to Trustee Rogan and Trustee Waugh's business strategy survey presentation on COVID. Trustee
Thank you.
Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor Angelo. So in a moment, I'm going to share my screen. I'll get working on that now so that we can all be looking at the same thing. There we go. So I'll kick us off, and then I'm going to turn this over to Trustee Waugh, and he's going to walk through what we learned during the survey, and then he'll kick it back to me and I'll walk through some points for discussion. So, but before we start with that, first I want to thank the board for agreeing to have a special meeting and thank the public for attending. We think it's, I'll speak for myself, I think it's very important. So, you know, when Trustee Wah and I began this process, it was a couple of weeks ago, and everything is changing so fast and so much is in flux. And so some of the ideas that you may see here, you may have heard about already. It's kind of a point in time survey. So where we are now is we're at safer at home until June 1st at the earliest. The state of Colorado is going to decide what to do about safer at home and the timing on Tuesday, May 26th, the day after Memorial Day. We received draft state restaurant opening guidelines yesterday. I think last night they were put out, and input is open until Friday for those. And then CDC guidelines for restaurant reopening just came out today. So there's a lot of input going on. But the reason that we're doing this is to facilitate the community discussion. And what we want is to get your ideas, to get your feedback. The Economic Vitality Commission met last week, and there were some great ideas from there. They sent out their own survey about PPE. And so I think the last thing I want to say before I kick it over to Trustee Wah is that he and I worked very hard on this, and we may not agree on everything, but what we do agree with, and Trustee Wah will tell me, I'm sure if I'm mistaken, is that everything in here should be discussed in a public forum. So with that, Trustee Wah, I'll kick it over to you, and you can just tell me when to advance the slides since I'm sharing my screen, if that works.
Great. Yeah, I was ready to do it too, but that's fine if you don't mind doing that. So thank you. And, you know, I echo Trustee Rogan's comments. I think we went out, we tried to reach out to as many people as possible. We created a survey. We'll give you a little bit of information. You can actually go to the next slide if you would. You know, again, this was created, you know, a week and a half ago, and it already seems old. So just a couple of numbers from Boulder County and the city of Boulder. You know, 95% of businesses in Boulder County have felt impact, and almost 80% of those has been significant. Only about 60% have continued operations, and 85% have reported that they need some kind of assistance. So next slide, please. Actually, before you do that, so you see here Lions businesses in the survey, 64% or almost 65% of Lions businesses have applied for some type of assistance, either from SBA, LCF, the revolving loan fund, or some other kind of funding assistance. Next slide, please. So, you know, varied degrees of impact. It's, you know, we all say, you know, we've heard the expression and probably read the things about we're all in the same boat. Well, we're in different boats. You know, I think that some are busier than normal. I think Neil would say that he's probably busier than he has been. Some local internet-based businesses I know are doing pretty well, seeing growth. People are shopping online and getting items, you know, through that. So that's good. Some have limited impact. So home-based businesses, a lot of the people who have businesses in the town of Lyons they're operating home-based businesses, and, you know, they're seeing little impact. But there are some that are seeing significant, and that's restaurants and retail and a lot of our seasonal businesses, as well as, you know, some businesses are completely closed and not able to because of regulations or because of financial considerations. So as we go through this, we're going to share some information. I'll just share some highlights. You know, we try to just report all of the findings. The survey is still open. If you'd go to the next slide, please. But, you know, it was really, it was created basically to be as inclusive as possible. We used cross-reference the Chamber of Commerce members with people who are businesses that hold a Lions business license. And we really set an open invitation. So anybody, even if you didn't fall into one of those two categories, you're invited to fill this out. There is a link here. The survey is still open. Even if you've answered before, if things have changed, if you want to give us more input and feedback, feel free to use that link there. So it really happened, the survey was focused on, are you open, you know, some specific COVID actions and activities, as well as we're trying to find out where people are getting their information so that we can enter those lines of communication. So we had a pretty good response. You know, we sent it to 224 people, and we got 32 responses. And then we've had a lot of, both Trustee Rogan and I have had a lot of conversations with local business owners. So next slide, please. Just a sample of what the survey looks like. Basically that we set up the task force and we were looking for information. We made most of the questions were not required to answer. So people who could answer what they felt comfortable with or otherwise. So just a list of the people who, the list of respondents as of last week. You can go on to the next slide. So just the types of businesses, as you can see, this is a pretty diverse list. So there is quite a bit of retail. People could self-identify. So I think we broke this down. There's people that are offering services either at someone's home or at their location, or people that are doing retail or other operations, but pretty diverse responses to the survey. Next slide. So are you open? 43% say yes. It's probably more than that if you see some of these other answers. You know, if you go through these, it's about, you know, I think we're probably in about the 60% range that Boulder County reported. But this, again, we let people self-report. So these are the answers that we're getting. A lot of people that can are scheduling by appointment. They're doing drop-off. You know, they have some kind of perhaps modified operations. So a couple key reopening questions. Number one, do you have a COVID coordinator? That's really recommended that you have someone that's kind of the center point, and there's a definition of what that is that we can provide. But about 50% said they had one. So, several were home-based businesses, and they're like, I'm the entire business. So sure, I'm the COVID coordinator, the head janitor, the CEO, kind of a little bit of everything there. But you know, I think that's something that the town can provide resources for. Actually, I won't comment on my personal opinions. I'll just report the data at this point. Have you posted COVID signage? About 40% have created some kind of signage or getting ready to. Are they screening employees? Various levels of screening from, you know, just verbally asking employees, or, you know, are you experiencing any symptoms, or is anyone around you experiencing them, to sign-in sheets, to some are taking temperatures and so forth. Are you providing PPE? Pretty much everybody is providing it for their employees, or their employees are providing their own. So they seem to have access to some of that in terms of at least masks and gloves or whatever the business may require. That's usually, right now, employers are being able to find that, I think, is at least what they're reporting to us. And then, do you have vulnerable population hours? Most do, and most can make arrangements for those vulnerable populations if they need to. Are you offering contactless payment? 65% of the businesses said they were, and also 65% of businesses said they don't really have protective shields, but that's a little skewed because of some home-based businesses and some places that don't really have those kinds of contacts. And then social distancing, all the businesses reported they're doing at least the minimum. Most of them have, you know, they're alternating schedules, they're doing other things. They're really trying to limit the amount of possibility of employees having to work wherever possible outside of the 6-foot distance. Mask policy, you know, at the time, most require employers wear them. Again, some smaller businesses where people aren't working together probably fit outside of that. Some require and some request in terms of their customers. And there's a couple of quotes there that you can read through. But most are meeting the state and county guidelines or more in their businesses based on what they reported, the details of what they reported. sanitizer and sanitizing, again, this is going to vary very highly by the type of business. We're very fortunate to have, everybody seems to be able to have access to sanitizer because of a couple businesses in town that are producing it. And thanks to those businesses, I know it's really helped a lot of businesses in town be able to maintain levels of good sanitation and have hand sanitizer for their customers and employees. Limiting occupancy. Almost everybody has 8 or less. Several limited to just 1 at a time. And then 5 are, they're basically just waiting for what the state regulations are. They're either waiting to open or they haven't implemented a policy because they really haven't had any guidance for that. And then everybody but the liquor stores that can do curbside service are doing that, but the liquor stores in our town are drive-through. I have drive-through windows anyway, so I think they're kind of doing that, but they reported that curbside was not an option. What can Town of Lyons do for you? I'll let you kind of look through this list. I think a lot of it is just, keep supporting us, make sure the town looks good, make sure that we all know what's going on. If you want to communicate with us, let's continue to promote that positive vibe. You see that there. So I think people in general they're happy that the town is doing things and communicating, but at the same time, they're amazingly resilient in kind of how they're handling all of this reopening right now. Okay. Layoffs, not surprising. A lot of people are waiting on regulations to see if they're going to need to lay people off. And I know I'm that one respondent that said, we're not hiring summer staff right now. So it's didn't lay anybody off, but we're not hiring anybody either. Where are you getting your information? This was a great question that Trustee Rogan put on there. We just want to see where people are getting their information so that we can make sure we can get our message into those lines of communication. It's a lot of different sources, but if the Town of Lyons, if we can make that argument, I think a lot of people are looking to what the town's doing, and you can see by the participation tonight that people are interested in coming to the town for that information. I'll let you read through this. What would you like the town to know? The last one, I think, summarizes it. What our businesses want the town to do, which is please do everything. So, the town businesses are amazingly resilient, and, they're plugging through it. Some are plugging through it, some are having difficulties, but in general, I think people are trying to do the best they can, and are showing pretty amazing resiliency. Let you read through a couple of these. I think this one about masks, we've been asked that a couple of times of what business owners can do to enforce mask policies and who they go to. So that's a question I think we'll need to answer tonight. All right, next slide. All right, well, that's the data. We'll definitely make all of the data available in terms of the responses. I mean, all of it is pretty much in these slides. I tried to include everything, but just wanted to get the business input. I appreciate the businesses that filled it out. And I think Trustee Rogan's gonna lead us through some discussion based on some of that input.
Thank you, Trustee Wah, and appreciate your pie charts especially. Thanks for putting that together. So these are going to be discussion points for the board after public comment. And so at a high level, we wanted to think about, okay, what are the problems that we're trying to solve here? And what we landed on was we want to keep everybody as safe as possible. And we want to help our businesses however we can so that they can survive this period and then thrive in the future. And the future might be in a week. At this point, we just don't know what that's going to look like. But so those are the two problems that we're trying to solve here. And so one of the challenges that we kind of saw as a thread throughout the responses was that people weren't clear about what direction was coming from where and what they should follow, which makes total sense because everything was changing so quickly and there were so many different lines of communication. So some solutions that we thought about were having a town hall about reopening, which Boulder County did, and I attended that last week with Representative Edie Hooten. And I learned a lot. I learned, for example, that the county has an epidemiologist whose job it is to work with businesses as they reopen. So we think that it's worth talking about having a town hall with reps from the board, from the Chamber of Commerce, from BOCO Health, anybody else who might want to be involved to address questions and concerns and to share ideas with each other. The other idea we had was to talk about is creating and distributing signs for every business. Because we're a gateway town and people come here from all over, and we hope they continue to do that, there are different rules in place in different places. For example, Weld County versus Boulder County. So if we see Lions as kind of a hub for people to come to and gather as they're going to Estes or wherever, I think it would behoove us to think about making signs just prominent everywhere with really clear language about what's expected and what's not in the town of Lions, regardless of what we decide. So in terms of communication, a couple of things. There's great information on the Town of Lions website. It's buried a little bit, so maybe we could surface that. So there's a link directly on the homepage to information that would affect businesses and residents about COVID. And then perhaps a weekly email communication from the town to business owners who opt in specifically, just to let them know the status of what's going on. You know, staff is working very, very hard on many different things. And I think having that communication going from the town just so people are aware would be great. So you can see here this bubble, the green bubble on the slide, which you'll see on every slide, is the litmus test that we use to decide whether we should talk about these things. And the litmus tests were, are we talking about things that make people feel safe or make people actually safer? Because that can be two different things. And then does it support our businesses? So we kept that in mind. So one of our challenges, like I said, is that we're considered a gateway community. We're a place on a place to somewhere else. And so we have visitors from all over, which is great. One solution we could think about is requiring masks for every face-to-face transaction. And we could talk about what that looks like and who might be excluded and included. But you know, we have 3 tools to work with when it comes to public safety around COVID, from my understanding, and that is masks, social distancing, and hand washing. And so we should think about using those. And then require hand sanitizing before and after transactions. So some considerations to think about here is that it will enhance, we think, public safety and consumer confidence. Some people might not have masks or sanitizer and they might not want to wear them or use them. Businesses might not be able to bear the cost burden of these. And so there's a potential for a hyperlocal supply chain with hand sanitizer, and we can source disposable masks. I think something that we'll talk about later is some funding that we can use to bring ideas like this forward. So that's that. And then social distancing. As we can see, it's difficult to maintain distancing, especially when you're conducting a face-to-face transaction. So one thing that could help would be markings at 6-foot intervals. Trustee Wah had the great idea of supporting local artists by paying them to create chalk drawings or other markings. And we could also engage local, extremely underemployed children to do the same thing. And that could be a fun project for families. You know, there could be, for example, a contest to see who has, you know, who gets to do the dairy bar or something like And then, so as restaurants get more guidance and we open up, curbside won't work as well for all businesses. And so we need to think about creative solutions for using the space we have to get the business that we want. So these are just some solutions. Empty outdoor spaces for limited pop-up retail and restaurants. There's the parking lot behind Define Motion. There's the empty lot at 446 Main. There's the Steamboat Mountain Foods parking lot, and perhaps even the interior of former Steamboat Mountain Foods if Dorothy is amenable. We can close a portion of High Street. This is an idea that's come up several times. And also we could close a portion of 4th Street. The EBC is talking about lots of different ideas for this. Kim had the great idea, I think, of making sidewalks one way on Main Street. Maybe only, at certain times, but, that would help with social distancing too, as those sidewalks are narrow. So we have to consider liquor laws, of course, and staff is working very hard on this. We also have to consider that we still do have the gathering limit of 10 people. And that may change, it may not change. And then we heard that there's a need for PPE and installation assistance, and we wonder whether LEAF can serve as a hub. So particularly, there was one business asking for help with a plexiglass shield. So these suggestions were reviewed by, again, this was a couple weeks ago, Chief Hoffman and Sergeant Christ, and then our Boulder County Health Liaison for this project is Zach Swank. And he provided a lot of information that totally happy to share, including a link to existing signage. He has a resource who can help with weekly communications if we would like that. He supports masking and sanitizing as good best practices. And he supplied a couple of references regarding sourcing PPE. So that thus ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rogan and Trustee Wah. That was very comprehensive and informative. I'd just like to mention at this time, Trustee Rogan touched on it, but the governor, by executive order, managed to secure $275 million that will be distributed to all municipalities in Colorado, to all population levels, and it's funds that were taken from the first bill that passed Congress and that the president signed. This is out of the first tranche. It can be used for anything related to COVID. So it will help us in some of our endeavors, whatever the board decides to do tonight. And I think that could really come into play. And I'd like some ideas to include in a letter that we will be sending out immediately to the three organizations that distribute those funds. I'd like to get that done as quickly as possible. And so we'll move on to a local business reopening phasing plan. Has that been covered?
That hasn't been covered, but I thought we were going to do public participation now, but can certainly wait.
I didn't understand your amendment. You wanted to amend after item number 1. So we can go to public comment now. That's the agenda. Thank you. Who would like to speak to the board?
If I may, Mayor, if you'd like to speak to the board, you can turn on your video and wave. You can raise your hand in the participant window, or you can send a chat.
Hi.
Doug, please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Doug DRC. I live at 107 County Road 69. I just had a comment about the public places that are not following any of the PPE stuff, any of the recommendations. I walked to Meadow Park yesterday and there was probably between 50 and 75 people and I didn't see anyone wearing a mask. There were lots of kids at the swimming hole, probably 20, that were all within 2 or 3 feet of each other with no masks. I drove by the Dairy Queen today and there was 10 or 12 people without masks. The Bear, I forget what that other swimming hole is called out east. There was 20 or 30 people there without masks. I'm just worried about with stuff opening up, whether we're encouraging the spread of the disease at this point. With you know, without that being addressed. I was shocked. I mean, everywhere I go, I do remodeling, I'm doing handyman work, I'm keeping really busy right now. It's just me. I wear a mask. I have the customers wear a mask. I wear gloves. I go to Home Depot. Everyone is required to have a mask. Yeah, I was just shocked. There's no signs or anything. I haven't been to, you know, Longmont Parks or anything to see what they're doing. But I was kind of under the assumption that, you know, within 6 feet, people should have masks on. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, sir.
You bet.
Anybody else? Nobody else from the public wishes to speak to the Board of Trustees?
Mayor Angelo,
Yes,
I did receive 2 emails that were sent to the board that would I could read in for public comment.
please do at this time, Madam Clerk.
All right, there is one from Mr. John Petrie, who lives on 4th Avenue here in Lyons. And this was directed to the board. Thank you for serving and thank you for soliciting input regarding COVID-19 for this evening's meeting. My preference is for the town to do no more than what the state and county require. Educate and then let residents, visitors, and businesses make their own choices. Please do not get prescriptive with residents, visitors, and businesses about what they must do beyond what is required by the state or county. Regarding public facilities, including parks, trails, picnicking, camping, etc., please do not close or restrict them unless the state or county require it. Please let people and businesses be free to choose. Thanks again for the opportunity to provide input. John Petrie. The second one is from Mr. John Honeman. He's on Goranson Court here in Lyons. Dear Board of Trustees, hope this reaches you all well and healthy. Up front, I have to admit my perspective may be a bit skewed because I've spent the last month and a half in New York City in support of the federal COVID pandemic response here. It has been insightful and frustrating and humbling. I hope to be home very soon. On the topic of home, I've been thinking of and yearning for my life back in Lyons. To say every resident of Lyons is blessed is a great understatement. So I hear you are planning to discuss a way forward to open up Lyons. Good. It is time to move away from the irrational fears that have taken hold of our society and smartly move forward to a better balanced state of affairs. We must leverage common sense, steer away from heavy-handed government policy enforcement, and find smart, creative ways to re-energize our local economy. Here's some input. It's a bit scattered, but really wanted to get something to you in my limited time right now. Recreation is going to be a big challenge this summer, with neighboring towns closing many of their recreation areas. Boulder just closed Eben G. Fine Park, and Longmont closed the beaches at Union Reservoir. And I hear Water World will not open this summer. These policies will undoubtedly put more stress on our amazing parks and creek access points. I recommend that the town immediately begin charging a fee for the use of LMJ Meadow Park for all non-resident users to cover the cost of cleaning and maintenance. If you keep the bathrooms closed and require pack-in, pack-out policy, the visitors will just utilize the creek for all disposal needs. I witnessed that firsthand many times, beer cans to diapers. Please reach out to and encourage the neighboring towns to keep their recreational facilities open. There is also talk of pools not opening this summer. Again, encourage Longmont and Boulder leaders to open them with appropriate safety measures. I'm sure our restaurants are hurting, so I recommend that you offer up Sandstone Park to local restaurants to include adult beverages Friday through Sunday. Set up order and delivery points and space out tables, chairs to encourage smart social distancing. Outdoor seatings at restaurants is part of the opening plan here in New York, and I think it's pretty smart. Turn this one over to the chamber, just give the legal go. Consider closing 4th between Main and Broadway and set up properly social distanced artisan booths from local shops or something of the sort. It is time to open smartly. We can't expect businesses to survive much longer without revenue, and we can't continue to pay this crisis forward to our kids and grandkids in the form of unsustainable debt spending. Federal, yes, but states and cities are sending huge demand signals. It's time to mask up and get to work. Hope the meeting goes well. John Honeman, 503 Goranson Court. And that was all I had.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And that was a wonderful letter. I read it earlier today. And the last sentence of masking up is an incredibly important fact that worked in New York City, certainly. Their totals are going down dramatically, and it's due to masking and social distancing mostly. Any other comments from any board members at this time? So we'll move on to local businesses reopening phasing plan. Who would like to lead this discussion?
If you don't mind, I can start with what the state is doing currently.
That's fine.
The state does have a survey out right now that they are asking people to take. They have put out their guidelines for how Colorado restaurants specifically could reopen for business. And they're taking input on that with the intent of coming out with their formal guidelines here within the next 7 days. So I think that's a good place potentially to start. And basically it is continuing to allow curbside and delivery for businesses, and that employees in restaurants and businesses should have their temperatures taken and logged upon entering a business. Of course, good signage is, like we've already talked about, for both employees and customers on hygiene practices and social distancing. And then they are saying that you do need visual markers 6 feet apart around and in all the businesses to help remind people that even though you may have a mask, you should still be socially distancing. Then they have guidance for employees on maintaining their 6 feet of social distancing between other employees, instituting breaks for employees so they can make sure and be washing their hands regularly, providing PPE, which again is an area we want to address how we can possibly help in that category. And then they have a whole section of how to reopen on-site dining, inside and outside, and they're taking input on that right now. Basically limiting party sizes to 6 people and tables being at least 8 feet of spacing between tables is what the guidance the state is suggesting, and that people wear masks into a business and out of a business, and the only time their mask is off is while you're eating. Is basically what that looks like. Minimizing touching objects that multiple patrons would be touching, of course, and cleaning protocols. And that is most of it. Some businesses are choosing to say, not enter, that you're not allowed to enter a business without a mask. And other places don't feel that's necessary. So those are some areas where I feel you guys could start your discussions and decide if you want to give input on this, follow whatever the state comes out with in the next week, or be more restrictive than that.
Any comments from the board?
Mary Angelo, can I give a quick update on one thing that was mentioned in the public comment concerning the liquor licensing issues?
Yes, sir.
So this is a hot topic right now among the municipal attorneys. Governor Polis on the 18th said that basically the state was willing to waive pretty much any liquor regulations in order to allow restaurants to serve in public thoroughfares, within right-of-way, within public parks. And so there's a lot of discussion happening right now among city and town attorneys about how to accomplish this, including emergency resolutions and modifying existing liquor permits on a case-by-case basis through emergency action of local liquor licensing authorities. But I just want to let you know that that's something that CML and the larger city attorney community is looking into, but there are not clear answers right now because a lot of these guidance came out a couple of days ago. However, there is pretty substantial background on allowing liquor in parks. Of course, not selling it there, but allowing it within parks. So there is ways to do that, but in terms of allowing it in sidewalks or streets, and then of course that would only be town-owned streets, that one's a little more uncertain at this time, but something that certainly is developing.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Miller, did you want to speak to the issue?
So I have a lot of questions that I think that we need to try and circumvent here. My biggest concern about all of this really is if we're going to have to implement these, follow these rules, the biggest issue is enforcement, right? Because if they're not enforced, then it's kind of a moot point, right? Like all of it. So the mechanism I think behind it all is obviously education, and signs, very specific signage that is kind of a step-by-step guide on what we expect from people coming in to a restaurant or a business. I think that's going to be really, really important because I have a really hard time the enforcement is on the business owner. And I would really hate to see something happen that we've already seen in other states, to somebody here because somebody didn't want to put a mask on. So I guess we need to have a sort of a implemented plan of sorts where, we do the signage, we do the educating all the businesses to make sure everyone's on board with whatever we decide today. And then we make sure that the sheriff's department is going to be there to back us up if something comes up. They're going to be willing to step in if something gets ugly, because there's been a couple of disputes already that have almost gone to blows in local businesses, and I just, that part scares me the most out of any of this, especially with more people coming in from out of town. I mean, I just, we're going to run into some more issues, I think. So I think we have to have a safety plan in place if this is the way we're, if we want to put this stuff, obviously we have to do the state guidelines and county guidelines, but if we're going to go any further than that, we have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So
Thank you, Trustee Miller.
I also think that it's probably a really good idea to have individual packets of stuff. Like somebody brought this, one of the business restaurant owners brought this up to me today, said, what about like maybe if people, we should be giving people individual packets of like ketchup and mayonnaise and mustard and that sort of thing, instead of having, you know, a container of, that's the sort of thing that they want direction on, you know, how do we operate from here on moving forward. So this is what I've got.
Thank you. Trustee Lowell?
I agree with Trustee Miller. You know, it's the old "you can lead a horse to water" problem. And I think as Doug Darcy pointed out in the public comments, you can educate people only so far. And we've heard Sergeant Chris tell us that Boulder County has yet to enforce a single COVID-19 restriction since restrictions have been in place. I like Trustee Miller's idea of a packet, perhaps. I think we should use some of the 275K or whatever it is that may be coming our way from the state. I mean, you could literally provide to the businesses, especially the restaurants, a packet containing, you don't have a mask, here's a mask, and then you put in a 2-ounce hand sanitizer. There you go. So before you come in here, put on your mask. Here's a hand sanitizer to help you after and before. So that's one possible use of that money that may be coming our way.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else wish to comment at this time? Trustee Rogan?
I wonder whether Sergeant Christ would like to address Trustee Miller's comments at this time.
Sure.
Sergeant Chris.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. So you guys have heard me speak this before, and it's a very tough fence that we're riding right now. I totally agree and give 100% support to really both sides of this issue. I see the need for getting the town back in order, but I also sympathize with trying to limit exposure and adhere to all the rules and regulations that are there. I will say with utmost certainty that if there's an escalation of any kind of issue, regardless if it's social distancing type of issue or not, you know, the sheriff's office is going to respond and handle it accordingly. Right now, we haven't had anything go to that level. Denver had an issue where a restaurant manager or chef, I think, was shot at, and over this mask issue, which is terrible to say the least. Fortunately, everybody will be okay. We definitely don't want to see things go to this level. That, I think, though, is more of the anomaly as opposed to the norm. The norm is going to be the smaller issues of, you know, this person's not 6 feet away, these people are over here in a group, this person's not wearing a mask. Until I get better direction from the sheriff and the district attorney's office, we will continue to support, respond to those issues with the intent to educate, mediate out anything that we need to do. That turns on to a second problem of, you know, Lyons is a small town, but it gets very busy on the weekends. We have limited staffing. Generally, there's one person assigned to town at all times. I did say in the board meeting on Monday that we do have the extra duty enforcement of traffic and stuff. So at random times, you could have up to 3, myself included, plus an additional officer in town. So these type of calls come in and they're very hit and miss. I left Lyons late today. We had a serious injury accident involving a motorcycle, and we had to airlift him to Denver General. Don't know the condition of this person, but those are the things that are going to take us away from the sometimes quick response at whenever these things come up. That being said, we still have deputies that can come from different areas, but the time delay is going to be a little bit of an impact when somebody decides to go to a physical altercation over a mask or a social distancing issue. So it's very much a double-edged sword for us. But I can say with the utmost certainty that if we're there, we get calls and things are escalating. Public safety is my job. It's our business. That's what we're here for. So we will respond at all costs to deal with it. You know, not all the time enforcement and tickets and penalties and jail are the right solution to these type of issues. I'm hoping, and I do firmly believe, that a lot of the concerns that come into play like this, where it's going to get really out of hand, I really believe that's going to be an anomaly and not the norm. I believe that we're all in this together, and people will adhere to that the best they can. I agree that a lot of this enforcement and checks and balances is going to come from the business owners. Our staffing, it just will not be able to provide us in the town the ability to go from Oscars to Smoke and Dave's on down the list, and and basically be the hall monitor, for lack of a better term, to make sure everybody's 6 feet apart, everybody's wearing a mask. There's definitely going to be a lot of ownership and responsibility on the individual folks that come in. I 100% agree that as much signage, email blasts and things like that, message boardings would be beneficial. I was fortunate enough to get a haircut the other day, finally, and it was odd, but when I got there, there was somebody outside who met me, and said, "You stand here, your appointment's in 15 minutes, we'll let you in." I mean, it was very controlled. So I think that's going to be the new norm for a while, and that's where the business owners are going to have to be able to enforce that the best they can and police that the best they can. And again, if something escalates to a higher level, then it's definitely a call to the sheriff's office, and we will come out and respond and deal with it accordingly.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I have a question really for Sergeant Chris. There's no way one deputy on Saturdays and Sundays and summer weekends in Lyons can possibly deal with the crowds in the parks, do any kind of speed enforcement, and deal with the crowds at the local businesses. Impossible for one person to do that. So if the town, for example, gets a sizable distribution from the state for COVID-related things like the governor was talking about, and the town has financial resources to pay for extra patrols, are they even available, depending on personnel-wise? Does the sheriff's office have extra people that could come to Lyons on weekends?
So yes, and yes, I believe. And that's always subject to change at any given time based on other call loads and what the availability is with the deputies. So I don't know who all's listening tonight, but I'll just repeat a couple things about the extra duty budget that we have and some of those type of questions that you brought up. So right now, the extra duty assignments that we do have are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for extra duty traffic enforcement in town. That can easily be changed to just being in town. That can easily change to half traffic, half walk in Main Street, checking in on the businesses, things like that. What it does afford is another officer in town that's basically dedicated to be in the town during that time block. So that is open to our deputies on a volunteer basis. It's a way for an officer to make a little extra money. The way it's structured right now is I allow deputies to come up on those days between a 4-hour and a 6-hour block, which could be changed as well. It does go back to the financing that you're talking about. We were down a couple months with no extra duty, so there's a little bit more in the budget. If there was any augmentation to the budget from the state, that would ideally help, and we can run both and get 2 additional officers. So the downside of that becomes, well, there's an up and a downside. Right now in the county, all events that are permitted through the county have been on hold and will continue to be on hold and not granted until after July 1st. A lot of my guys rely on overtime and stuff to kind of make ends meet, just like everybody else out there. So there's some guys out there that are starving a little bit and will probably jump at the chance to earn some extra bucks and come up the Lyons. The staffing requirements at this point in time are allowing us to do that. We're still at a tier 3 for our staffing, so we have not hit any kind of diminished staffing. So things are good in that area. So that's definitely a plus. I think it's a great idea, and I'm willing to sit down and draft up any kind of proposal or look at some numbers for you guys and see if if that can happen. One of the other programs that we did, especially during the opening of Laverne Johnson Park, was we had the same contract through our extra duty budget through the town to allow for a deputy to come up and do nothing but parks patrol. That was a 6 to 8 hour block, and they continued to bounce back and forth between Laverne Johnson, Sandstone, and Vaughn Park because it was so crowded. I mean, those first couple of years, the park was just, in my mind, out of control. So the budget allowed us to do that, and that was their specific job. So it does bring extra officers in town. Presence is a great way to enforce. Most of the times, if we're standing there and people are going to abide by the rules. So I think that's a very valid option to help with the town and you know, address some of Trustee Miller's concerns, and I'm sure business owners in towns. I know that opening up a shop in Lyons and then all of a sudden getting thrown into an enforcement role doesn't quite fit with everybody, and that's why we're employed. So it will definitely give, I think, a little bit of pressure relief and back support for any issue that even starts to escalate. You know, a lot of times we can head that off at the onset. So I think that's a good idea and a good suggestion, and I'd be willing to put something together.
One quick related question. I think I know the answer to it, but sometimes I don't know things I think I know. We do extra patrols during the festival, a lot of them, but that's basically a pass-through cost of the festival. Like there's not money sitting in the town budget to pay for extra festival patrols for festivals that won't happen. Is that right?
That is correct. The festivals, as of a couple of years ago, are 100% funded by the festival promoter, and the town does not have any regards to that. So
thank you, sir. I also think that would be a great use of funds if we do get some. Trustee Waugh, did you mean to speak, sir?
Yes, please. Thank you. So I just wanted to add a couple of comments to what I've already said. You know, businesses are concerned. I think we need to remember that the businesses are just as concerned for their employees, which are often family members and so forth. So this is not a mad rush to revenue. This is I need to get my business back. At the same time, worried about their employees and their families. And as Trustee Miller said, the frustration is there's not a lot of information from anywhere. What do you do about ketchup packets? You know, I don't know, and that is frustrating. But you know, I think if the state is not communicating that and the county's not communicating that, I'm worried that how we would communicate that. You know, I think enforcement comes from consistency and messaging. So if we can be consistent with state and county regulations, that's what I hear consistently. I think the letters today we heard were that as well. You know, I think it's going to be a lot easier. Business owners can say, hey, you know, whether they agree or not, they can say, hey, it's the county that's doing this, you know, kind of throw the blame, defense that way. So I think with the amount of people, you know, I know people in Longmont that don't know, that aren't tracking the rules in Arvada and Westminster and those types of things, because it's a hodgepodge of different regulations. And I think that creates a lot of confusion for business owners as well as for, you know, if you're from Texas and you're driving through, you don't know if you're in Boulder County, you don't know, you know you're in Colorado, and that's really all that you know. I would like to see us, if we could, formerly there was, for the chamber, there was an organization called LEG, the Lions Economic Gardening Group, which was kind of a resource team that would help small businesses. I'd like to see if we could set up that kind of volunteer organization. I don't know if this is something that Lions volunteers might be able to help us with, but it's basically a go-to resource for information, sharing of ideas and those types of things. I'd like to see if we could get maybe a couple of people that are passionate about the issues and how to protect public safety. You know, I think they could work maybe on a volunteer basis for that and support communication. You know, I don't know much about this money that we're talking about, but, you know, I think a resource center setting up that Trustee Rogan talked about, you know, provide signage, provide infrastructure support, provide website updates and so forth. And I think if we could spend money on resources, and I don't know if this is allowable, things like if we're going to open up Sandstone Park, can we rent a generator and put that out there for, can we get lighting and those types of things if we open up some of these spaces? Because I think that would really make it, it would show the businesses the support and allow them to focus on what they do and not trying to set up a restaurant in a field somewhere. The last thing I'll say is I'm a huge fan of Denver's approach to, we don't know what to tell you, so why don't you tell us, and we'll have somebody take a look at it that knows and get sign off from public safety officers and whoever needs to. Our businesses in this town are amazingly creative and adaptive, and I think they're going to come up with solutions that there's no way, even in 7 hours of Zoom meetings, we're not going to be able to figure out exactly how to best solve the problems of other people's businesses. That's all I had.
I think from the understanding that I had that was related by Congressman Goose, that money cannot be used for budget shortfalls. That money needs to be used for strictly COVID-related items specifically. And I would just like to reiterate my position. This meeting has been totally focused so far on business. I would like to use those funds for testing and tracking capabilities, because if we are forced to, if we get a relapse and we're forced to close, that's going to impact the businesses more than anything else. So I would sincerely like to coordinate with JJ, maybe the medical center, and do testing and implement a tracking program. I think that would be incredibly important and a great use of these funds. Counselor, would you like to speak to any issues?
Yeah, Mayor Angelo, to that point specifically, because Boulder does not have a public health, Lyons does not have a public health authority, those duties fall back to Boulder County. So we'd have to be requesting Boulder County do that on behalf of Lyons. Lyons cannot do that independently. We don't have the ability basically to require someone to undergo testing, whereas Boulder County does.
And so could we have Boulder County come to Lyons and administrate that program for us on site?
We'd have to have that discussion and potentially have
the capability.
Okay.
That.
Okay. Anybody else with any comment?
Mayor, before we leave the topic of businesses, Erin Foudy with the chamber has been actively commenting on the chat area, and I don't know if you want to give her a minute to tell you what is already in place, such as LEG is already up and running again, she is saying, and has been giving advice to businesses. And that they do have a page called Back to Business that's on their website that is a list of all the business resources that they have available as well.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
Yeah, I just had one more thought, that instead of maybe having the code enforcer look for like vehicles that are not registered in people's driveways, that perhaps he could be redirected to doing code enforcement for COVID during this time. Maybe that would be a better use of our funds instead of some of the other seemingly more trite issues at the moment.
Interesting suggestion, Trustee Miller. Would anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Town Parks Plan.
So are we going to wrap this up at the end with the guidelines we're suggesting? Is that how we're going to hold this meeting?
Yeah.
Or after each item?
Yeah.
At the end?
Yeah, I think so.
I know we have both Dave and Kim on the line, who have been going to all of the different COVID meetings with their respective park and rec associations and different communities. Don't know if you would like to have them let you know what's, and there's also guidance out from the state, of course, on parks. And as you heard earlier, Boulder County is starting to close some of their facilities that they're seeing people not abiding by the social distancing rules.
In Denver and Arapahoe County as well.
I don't know if Dave or Kim, if you want to give any background of what you've heard so far.
Kim?
Sure, I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
I have my video too. Hi. So yes, Dave and I have had several conversations about this and have some concerns as well. I think everybody's starting to see it, especially the last 3 days with temperatures in the 80s and 90s. There were about 38 cars on Sunday. There were several again on Monday. My office right out that window looks out to the gate at Laverne Johnson Park. And so we kind of want to get direction from the board about how do we do this? How do we do this? We currently have RV camping. We're not allowing tent camping because of the Boulder County Safer at Home, and to many of the comments from the public and other trustees, following Boulder County has been really helpful for us in my opinion, from a staff perspective, because we've been able to call people and say, we're sorry you can't tent camp. We don't have any public facilities open. We're in Boulder County and they're still under a Boulder County Safer at Home through May 26th. So we did have some tent reservations for the weekend. They've all been canceled. When we look this, and feel free, Dave, to jump into if I miss anything or overspeak. But so RV, and Dave and I talked about that. It's set up well to be socially distanced. We do get phone calls. We had probably a dozen today asking if Laverne Johnson would be open for the weekend. As part of our education, we say the order is you should not travel more than 10 miles from your home. So we have that. I'm trying to think of you guys have the document, but the gate is closed at LMJ, but it's not locked. So folks can still drive in there. There's a small sign up there. We certainly can work on more signage. You know, we're getting a lot of people going into the park, walking in. And so, Dave, do you want to talk about the clicker idea? Just in terms of how many people do we?
Yeah, I think overall, just to give a synopsis, currently in following the state and county guidelines and even taking it a step further in Lyons, we have closed off major parking areas in town. And, you know, we're starting to see those increases. We've talked about it in previous board meetings. People are now starting to park, you know, outside of the parks, and we're seeing that, you know, the larger groups starting to go in. And you just talked about how some of those groups just aren't adhering to the social distancing or the mask wearing. We have talked about at the staff level, if we were to look at phasing as some of the area agencies are, or communities, and we start to open up some of the parks, or slowly open them up, what would that look like? And, you know, Laverne Johnson Park does have a point of control at the front with its gatehouse. And, you know, could we have partial areas of the parking lots opened up with every other parking space to help control, you know, the amount of people in the park, and perhaps open one restroom facility and only allow certain numbers of people in and out of those facilities at a time with markings on the ground. And then also look at the number of picnic tables we have and how they're spaced, and only allow use of certain numbers of, and then also campgrounds. And so we're just looking at what other communities do and see if that can be done safely in our community. The difficulty is, you know, how do we control people walking into the park and utilizing the rivers? We all saw what happened in Boulder yesterday with Boulder Creek. And again, to Trustee Miller's point, how do you monitor and control that, especially if people aren't being socially responsible? And, you know, we've had several conversations with the Parks and Rec Commission. Trustee Browning sent us some information about Longmont, and, you know, how do you enforce some of these rules that people are trying to put in place when it really does require people to understand the information, be socially responsible, and we don't have the resources, as Sergeant Chris said, to be everywhere with the vast amount of parkland that we have. So what makes sense for Lions? We know people, as the weather warms, are going to come here. And we do have staff that we have at the parks, at the head gate of Laverne Johnson Park. We also use Trident Security out of Longmont, who patrol the parks and help us to educate. Where that's another layer of education, and they go around and contact people and let them know about these things. And then when things rise above a level for them, they contact the sheriff's department. But we've had a lot of ideas as far as, you know, how to facilitate restrooms, should we open them, which really is a good thing, because if we don't have anything open, people just tend to go elsewhere. Playgrounds are still closed, but areas are opening, things like basketball courts or tennis courts with the proper guidelines and education in place. We do have signage out there. We've worked with Boulder County and area agencies to update that signage. It's just how much money do we want to put into printing things when things change? There is some generic signage. And do we want to print it larger and make it more official, or do we want to continue to just have it, you know, be laminated in-house and posting it around different places? That's some of what we've looked at this point.
Right.
I'll make two comments. Did you want to add something to that, Kim?
No, I was just going to talk about the signage, because
I'd like to address that.
Sure, it's just
I don't
challenging for us to do.
I don't want you to think in terms of the signage as a budget item, because we are going to get funds for COVID related. We are going to get funds. And so we can reimburse the Park and Rec's budget once we do get those funds. I don't know how much they're going to be, but I certainly hope that they're going to be enough to pay for the signage that would be required. And Sergeant Chris, I know that you had a very strong opinion in regard to this concept at the last meeting, so I'd like your feedback now.
Okay, and again, I'm on the hot seat with the sensitivity to the town and bringing people in and getting this going. I said at the last meeting, and I'm still going to stand by this, that opening the parks too soon, I think, is just going to be detrimental. We saw what happened in Boulder, and you know, you guys are exactly right. There's really no way to enforce that unless you want to start a riot. It's going to be difficult, to say the least. So it basically becomes the new norm. And I can relate it to the days of the legalization of marijuana. We used to deploy the SWAT team and about an additional 50 officers up to CU campus on 420. And the CU campus allowed an area of barren field for people to come and do an illegal activity, which is very difficult. Once that became legalized, they no longer needed our services. So the point being is that enforcement in a large crowd like that for these type of things it's going to be non-existent. So if we open up the parks and we open them up a little bit, it's like the Dutch boy with the finger in the dike trying to hold back the dam. It's just going to overflow, and there's not a lot we can do for it. I'm going to say that up front. We could be in the parks. We can back up Trident Security, but you throw 100, 150 people in the park, it's going to be difficult.
I appreciate your frankness, Sergeant Christ. Trustee Lowell.
Yeah, I appreciate Sergeant Chris' point there about opening up the parks too soon and the ability to enforce some of the regulations. I'm coming at it from a different aspect. I say we choke off the source of the problem. I don't know whose idea it was to open up the 2nd Avenue parking lot by the wastewater treatment. Somebody moved the Jersey barriers, and so this weekend, at one point when I went by, there was about 20 cars parked in there and people were going into Bone Park from that 2nd Avenue lot. So my suggestion is close that lot permanently and you've solved about 50% of the problem, at least at Bone Park. Second issue, people are going into the Black Bear Hole, even though the parking is shut off there, they're parking on Railroad Ave. We should be putting up no parking signs on that strip of land immediately by Craig Ferguson's business and down behind Habitat for Humanity. The weekend before, or one of the days before, that was literally filled with automobiles. I think Trustee Miller can back me up on that point. The third thing is, and I continue to harp on it, I guess because I live so close to it and I'm over there so often, but this October and November hole kayak structure, it's going to get out of hand. I think we're dodging a bullet this upcoming weekend because I'm looking at the temperatures. I think Sunday is going to be 58 and rainy, and Saturday is going to be 70 and partly cloudy and rain again on Monday. So think about if this weekend was 85 or 90 degrees. I mean, I walked by there a couple days ago and there were no less than 16 people sitting on the steps there, none of them socially distancing, none of them with face masks. Some of them were members of the kayak club, granted, but the people who were there to watch were certainly not abiding by any of the COVID-19 regulations. So the third thing is rather, we need to put up no parking signs along the McConnell Bridge and extending up McConnell Drive for some distance. And the fourth thing is, and we talked about this, that parking lot that services the October and November holes is owned by Northern Water. I would urge town staff to get a hold of somebody at Northern Water. Brian Werner used to be the communications person there. I don't know whether he's retired or who's in charge now, but that would certainly be a place to start to find out if we can get some cooperation from them, because that parking lot as well is chock-a-block full of cars. So my point is, I think if we choke off the parking access and prevent visitors from walking into the park, you've taken care of a fair amount of the issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was part of the last time I spoke about this, was that essentially, if you can't drive into the park, that's going to solve 50% of your problem because people are going to move on elsewhere. So the parks are already busy. We already see an uptick because people are finding other areas to park. So I totally concur with those ideas about the parking in and around town. That will definitely deter people and keep it at bay. We open up specifically those parking lots in Laverne Johnson for cars just to flood in. It'll fill up by 9 o'clock in the morning on a good weekend, and then you're done. So.
Yeah, if I could just respond to a few of Trustee Lowell's comments. So the 2nd Avenue parking lot was opened. It had to be open so Lions Valley Village residents could park there for the paving project. It was closed today, just so people know. We also blocked off the backside where the recycle area splits to Lions Valley River Park with barricades as that was open. As we weren't able to fence that area through the budget this year. So that's been blocked too, as we were seeing increased activity as people seem to want to drive back that way. The Parks and Rec Commission does have some recommendations that I think were forwarded to you in a document that Kim and I put together, Kim mostly through a meeting that we had. And one of the suggestions was to start adding barricades with signage for no parking on adjacent areas and side streets. We just haven't done that because we hadn't had that discussion with the board as of yet. And again, Staff is hoping to have this discussion, and these are just suggestions right now based on what we might want to do as we move forward to the next stage. So certainly open to what the Board of Trustees might want to do with parks. Right now, I would say we have been successful to this point with the way things are presented, and have just been following the guidelines for people to walk in, utilize trails for hiking, jogging, and the river access. So, but we are starting to see that increase with people wanting to get to the water. So larger crowds and not adhering so much to the guidelines.
Thank you.
And I think if I could,
Go ahead.
sorry, Mayor Angelo, if I could echo that, what staff really would like is from the board to let us know what your thought is about opening the parks at all, not at all, tent camping, if we do open them, how much or how little. I think too, to Trustee Lowell's comment, I can kind of see, and Sergeant Chris is probably familiar with this too, that we can close Second Avenue off for parking access for Bone. But I did see a sheriff deputy park at Prospect and Fourth, you know, where the Ped Bridge comes. And I don't know, but are we going to move the problem over to that area of town? And so it's definitely challenging, but we would really look to you guys for guidance about the parks, about our summer events, you know, getting the variable message sign. We have several questions. We really are hoping you guys will give us your guidance on what you would like us to do.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Okay, I have a question to the town attorney. Is the town free to just declare no parking in particular areas and put up some sort of temporary signage, which itself raises the question if you declare no parking on the streets, you know, by the, you know, behind the habitat houses and that whole access area to Black Bear Hole, how exactly do we do that? Stick a bunch of signs in the ground that say no parking, and do we have the authority to do that?
We'd have to look at the ownership of the individual road. I mean, if it's a CDOT right away, we don't have the right to do that. If it's a private road, we don't have the right to do that. If it's town right away, then there may be options available to us. But
for example, Railroad Avenue, all the way along there, it's a town. I think that's a town-owned street. Do we have an ordinance that says people can't park there? Would we have to pass an ordinance, or we just stick signs in the ground saying you can't park here?
we would certainly need something. We have resolution, and probably an emergency resolution. This kind of in one way relates back to the liquors and the roadways and thoroughways. What people are doing are closing streets via resolution. And so I think we would probably do the same for individual streets, but certainly would take some action by the board to accomplish that.
Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I think in the past, too, like when the traffic was really bad in the summer, we were just putting up close to through traffic, like on Evans and Park, where they were just flying through, trying to bypass all the traffic. And I don't know if we did a resolution or something at that point, but I know we would put up no through traffic signs at that point.
If you do that, you're going to have to hire weekend parking enforcers, which we don't have.
Trustee Rogan.
Trustee Miller's had her hand up for a while now, just alerting you to that.
Okay, Trustee Miller then.
Okay, so code enforcement guy, right? Our man who is the code enforcement officer, Mr. Dale, right? He could do the parking enforcement also. He can shift his focus to parking enforcement, right? Okay, and if we are going to open up these parks in any way, shape, or form, I have several things to say. One, we have to open up the parking lots on some level. If it's every other parking space, fine, but people have to have a place to park, and we want the revenue. We don't want them all over our streets. I watched 4 college girls get out of a car today without masks on, with their suits, with, you know, everything, and go up to Black Bear Hole, and another guy pull up behind them with a carload of people. I mean, it's constant right here to go to the Black Bear Hole. I think the Black Bear Hole is going to cause us a whole lot of trouble this year. Because that parking lot's closed and it's free parking anyway. So when it is open. So that's one thing. Second thing is, if we should not open up any restrooms. I know that I think that if we have to have porta potties. There's several reasons for that. Porta potties are cleaned by professionals who have PPE on anyway. That's what they do. They go around and clean porta potties twice a day, 3 times a day, whatever whatever it calls for, basically. They're cheap. They're not as cheap as they were last summer because of this whole thing, but they're still cheaper than having to pay a staff member of ours and every hour to go in and clean or whatever, and have them potentially exposed to whatever it is in there. Plus, they're a smaller surface area. They're much smaller surface area than one of those huge restrooms in Meadow Park. They're, 2x2 or 3x3 or whatever they are, instead of 200 square feet with several stalls in them. So that was my other thing. So porta potties around town are going to have to, I really think that's the solution for, people's restroom needs. Besides that, I don't really have anything. I just really, the parking, if you're going to open up parks, I don't think they should be open personally, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Trustee Rogan? No? Trustee Lowell?
I have one question. This may sound like doomsday, but I asked town council in an email prior to this meeting if he would weigh in on this. If worse comes to worse and the situation becomes untenable, and we've done everything we can, and we find that the parks are still overrun with people not distancing, ignoring the law or the regulations, are we within our rights to close the parks to all? And I only ask that question because I understand that the parks were built with federal funds and we can't restrict non-residents. We have to treat everybody equally. But does that extend to an actual closure of the parks? Can we close the parks legally, council?
To Trustee Lowell, I don't have that email from you, but I do have an answer for you. And we can close the parks. There's no question about that.
Okay.
But I don't, for whatever reason, I don't have an email from you the last email I have from you was middle of April. So.
No, that was the question. I just repeated the question there. So you needn't search for my email, but so you're saying despite the fact that there are federal regulations governing visitors to the park, we can legally close them?
So the problem with the federal regulations is distinguishing between different types of people is equal protection. It's not, so long as we treat everyone the same, close to everyone, then we can certainly do that. And in fact, that's what's happening in some of these other cities and counties where certain parks, like in Boulder, the Riverfront Park is now closed, where people have decided to violate social distancing orders. Happening in Aurora in a park, I heard today. The Cherry Creek State Park swim beaches are now closed by the state. So this is happening all over the place. So certainly Lions would be permitted to do the same and close some or all of its parks if it so desired to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Madam Clerk, how many days is the code enforcer on duty?
I believe he's only scheduled for 12 hours a week.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I just wanted to let everybody know that it's not
Not a full-time job.
no, not only not full-time, but 12 hours a week is not going to get the job done. Anybody else wish to make a comment?
It'll help.
Yeah, that's true.
I do want to.
Go ahead.
I do want to mention as we're trying to balance some of these revenue and expense items, We have found out since we've been using the porta potties, they are $500 each per month. So if you have one in, you know, several areas throughout town, it'll quickly add up to, you know, several $1,000s a month to have that available as well as you're making some of your decisions.
Thank you. Any other comments? Trustee Miller?
Who are we using? Because that's that's twice as much as we pay. Do you know who we're using, Victoria?
Yeah, Dave should be
Yeah.
on here. He knows who.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is an increased cost because of, I believe, COVID for one.
Right.
And then also ADA, we're required to have ADA.
On all of them?
No,
There's
not on
only
all,
one, yes.
not on all of them, but we have only placed one in the parks right now. There's one at the visitor center, one at Laverne Johnson, and one at Bone. And so
Okay.
only have one. It is ADA.
Okay. Yeah, because we pay half that for the COVID price.
Yeah.
So, but ours is not an ADA. So I'm just wondering who we go through.
Yeah, our others are less when we don't have to, when we have more than one.
Any other?
Here's a thought on all this, in particular, listening to Sergeant Christ about what I think is exactly right. That even if you open it up 50% of the parking spaces, plus you have walk-ins, the ability to enforce social distancing and mask wearing requirements it's just impossible. So this thought came to me, do we have the ability to close the parks on Saturdays and Sundays and leave them open Monday through Friday and shift a lot of our patrol and stuff to the weekdays and basically just say, we can't manage this on weekends, so we're going to close it Friday, Saturdays and Sundays, leave it open. Really, the intent would be for use of local residents during the week.
Counselor?
You can open or close your parks whenever you want, so long as the rules are applied equally to all people.
Okay, that's an option.
May I ask a question?
You may.
Trustee Browning, would that be the park area, but still allow for RV camping?
Right.
Okay. And what about tent camping?
I mean, right now we can't do that at all. So we don't even have a choice. But
The issue with tent camping is really the bathroom facilities. Whereas
Boulder County prohibits it at the moment.
Right.
Any other comments?
I think that's due to expire at the end of the month, though.
Okay, so we need to decide, could we allow limited tent camping on
Yeah.
weekends?
In our camping, Kim, I'm going to let you, just so the board knows, I'm not feeling the greatest, so I'm letting staff answer. But Kim knows how our camping is set up and how many sites we have there that are well past a requirement for distancing.
Kim?
Sure, and Dave and I spoke about it as well. The way the Laverne Johnson and even actually Bone are set up is each area has, the tent spaces have the gravel and the railroad ties around them, and they all are spaced far enough apart. So from a socially distant tent camping, that is, we feel is an option that they're far enough apart. We did have some questions, the drive-through sites that are, 1 through 6 as you pull in, but even those, the tent pads are more than 6 feet apart. So that's an option. And this is why we really want the guidance from you all is if we allow tent camping, then the restrooms are open. And tent campers generally want to tent camp on the weekend. And so then we just really need to think about that gate keeps opening and closing. We certainly can have somebody there. We have tags. I have them right here where you can hang them on your vehicle that you're there, but it's just at the beginning. And so we're trying to figure that out, but I don't think we should expect anybody to tent camp and use the porta-john, but that might be an option. I'm not sure.
What type of identification or confirmation do tent campers have when they arrive? Do they have something on their smartphones or something? So I've got tent camping reservations that they can show at the front gate.
They may, and we can email them and ask them, based on the back end of the system, we have all that information, because
I mean, if you close the parks on weekends to people driving in or walking in, but somebody's made tent camping reservations, and you have somebody stationed at the entrance gate, say for Laverne Johnson Park, do they have some confirmation electronically or paper or whatever that shows I've got a tent camping pass? That number of people, especially when you social distance the tents, is not going to create a problem. But basically, do you only let the RV and the tent campers in on weekends? That's the question. Can you do that?
I think we can do it fairly effectively. I don't think we'll have 100% just campers allowed in, and some may or may not have their receipt with them, but I think we can really work with them too.
It's like when it's rented out for the festivals, if somebody shows up and says, well, I've got a camping pass, you don't get in unless you show that you something that you have a camping pass. So, that's the question. And I understand your concern is if we just say the parks are closed on weekends, what do you do with the RV people that are there by the week and the tent campers that you could probably manage the numbers on and get some revenue from? And that's my question. Is it manageable to just let tent campers and RV people in there on the weekends?
Counselor, I have a question for you. When you say it's illegal to close the park, if you close the park to everybody, are we going to run into a problem making exceptions to tent camping and RVs? Are we going to run into a legal problem if it's challenged?
I think because those people are paying for a spot for the town's acting either in its regulatory capacity or its proprietary capacity. You have to always kind of keep that in mind. And most restrictions on how the government acts are within its regulatory capacity. And so we create restrictions on how the town allows people in and out of its parks, and it's potentially problematic on the basis of classification of that person or the Equal Protection Clause. If the town is renting space to somebody, a camping spot, a pad, that's acting as proprietary capacity or kind of more free to act in that manner. I would get a little more concerned if, yes, we're allowing tent camping, but if you have tent camping, then you have a free pass into Laverne Johnson Park, versus being, yes, you can be on your pad, if that makes sense. I think the town has a little more freedom with concern to the tent campers, but if you start creating classifications of people, then that's when it gets problematic.
I gotcha. Trustee Rogan.
Thanks. So I am of the opinion that it would be unfair to open the parks to tent camping on the weekends and not let local residents in on the weekends. And I'm unsure about how much revenue partial tent camping would bring in. I would imagine that because RVs are closed or they're self-contained, there's far less risk of transmission versus a porta potty or opening one of the bathrooms in Laverne Johnson Park. And so I would be, I'd be against tent camping at this time.
Any other comments?
So,
go ahead, Kim.
And just asking for guidance, are you all going to make that decision and let staff know that and effective when? And the reason I say that is because we are getting so many questions, and we've been able to deflect with the tent camping and not had very many problems, and people have been kind to refund everybody who had Memorial Day weekend camping. But right now we do have reservations starting on the 26th and 27th. So for tent camping, because the stay at home went, through there. So I haven't canceled those people's, camping yet, but we really are looking for direction from the board of all of these in terms of what you would like us to tell our
Trustee
residents.
Rogan.
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we don't know what is going to happen the day after Memorial Day with Safer at Home. So we don't know whether we'll get any sort of option to even open up camping. Is that right?
I believe the Safer at Home lasts until June 1st.
Okay.
And there is no restriction currently under Safer at Home on camping itself. There's restrictions on playgrounds, pools, and amusement parks with regards to parks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's lifted Monday at midnight.
Monday, okay.
After Labor, Monday, that night, things open. And so, and it's my understanding from the business community that the tent campers are really good customers in our downtown. They're the ones who go and get coffee in the morning and breakfast, and they're the ones who want a Lion souvenir while they're in town. And so I do think we have to start balancing that, and maybe you want to allow camping just during the week when the park's open and close everything on the weekends. I don't know. But we do have people with reservations, and we need to be able to notify them in advance if we're not going to be open.
Okay.
And I just confirmed it is Monday at midnight. I'm looking to order right now. So.
Okay. Any other further discussion on this topic? Moving on, events, outdoor games, summer concert series, and good old days. Staff?
Sure, I guess I'll, same thing, just looking for guidance from you all. We have artwork and bands booked for the summer concert series. It starts on June 11th. We certainly can cancel for the whole season if that is the desire of the board. We may postpone it. There are 10 Thursdays, I believe. 8.5 of the bands are very local to Lions. There's another band that has, generally they bring in some other folks, and that was the week before Rocky Grass. But since Rocky Grass has been canceled, I'm not sure what would happen. So some of our thoughts as staff are partly, oh, maybe you could do summer concerts if they're in Sandstone Park. It's mostly locals. The bands are from Lions. They're not traveling. Could we, put kind of a ring or a picnic blanket square where each person should go? I think on the other hand, the consideration is if we're the only community in Boulder County that's having a Thursday night summer concert series, are we then expanding, kind of like the parks? Are we then inviting people to come socially enjoy music outside at Sandstone Park who aren't from here? So we're looking for a little direction on that. Do we cancel entirely? Do we postpone a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks? And then good old days, I think Mrs. Laverne spoke the other night. She's asked us about June 27th. Right now, that seems really hard to do because it's one event, and in terms of being able to promote it, and also it's folks, coming back to Lions at different age groups. But does that go into early fall? And then we talked about Lions outdoor games. That's the other big one on Monday night. And right now that's scheduled for September 5th, I believe, but it sounds like that also will not happen. So we just want to know your thoughts on the summer concert series, on the good old days.
And as I mentioned during the meeting on Monday, I think the town's decision on this should be, it's either, all no events or all events. Basically, we shouldn't be picking and choosing. If the town's position is that some of these events should be canceled, it's going to be hard to justify under the contracts with the performers for the concert series or the outdoor games or whatever we have lined up for good old days that their event can go forward, but or can't go forward, but others can. And so I would have a concern if we started picking and choosing which events we can do.
That's an interesting observation that I think we should take into consideration, Councilor. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I'll start this off. If others disagree, that's fine. But if the festivals are all canceled for the summer, and the consensus of the board the other night was even in early September, it's impractical to go forward with outdoor games, then I think we just cancel both Good Old Days and the summer concert series. And although I will state for the record, the summer concert series is one of my favorite things in Lions. It kills me to cancel that. But I don't think we can, even with the crowds that are there, I don't think you could maintain the social distancing. And maybe let's give some consideration to in the fall, perhaps if there's been no double peak of the virus and things that are looking better, maybe schedule some Saturday afternoon concerts in the fall with the same local bands to try to give them some additional revenue or something. I just don't see how you can pick and choose event by event in the summer, which will work and which don't. And if we can't make the festivals work, we can't make the outdoor games work, then I don't think we should put the effort into trying to make Good Old Day work or try to do 3 out of 8 summer concerts, as much as I hate that.
Trustee Miller, I think your hand was up first originally.
I'm going to have to agree with that statement of having to cancel them all, although it's also devastating to me. Good old half day is what I call it now, because it used to be a whole weekend, but that one's pretty much for the kids. So that's kind of a bummer. But the concert series, maybe, I don't know if anybody saw Joe Kukla and his band on the float trailer this weekend that they were raising money for Leaf, but they were doing the band thing around, being pulled around town. That was pretty cool. Okay. That was live music. That was socially distanced live music. And so maybe, the individual bands could somehow get together and form some other sort of fun thing like that, where the town wasn't involved. So we still have some sort of live music in town, because that's just hard. But I do tend to agree with Trustee or Mayor Pro Tem Browning on this.
Trustee Rogan.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Browning and Trustee Miller, and I actually had that same idea. So that band drove by our house, and it was the best thing in weeks that happened. And so I wonder if Attorney Dittman can maybe answer this, but if we were to change the summer concert series to a traveling summer concert series, would that run the same risk of saying, we can't cancel one event? No, you're shaking your head.
I think it's a little different because, what's impinging on the, one event versus all events is the use of town property. And if someone wants to roam around in a trailer and play music, not breaking any other traffic laws or anything else, of course, that's up to them. I mean,
the town can't pay them to do that. Is that what you're saying?
The town could pay them to do that, but they're not using town property to do so. And so I think it is different enough. And something else I was going to mention too is the city of Colorado Springs is considering doing drive-in, concert series where they can use baseball stadiums and the Sky Sox Stadium, for example, to do drive-in movie theater and that kind of thing. So maybe that's an option, but it's not using town parks. And the concern is having people close to each other in town parks. It's not people staying at home and watching something or being in their car and watching something.
Thank you. Trustee Watt.
Yeah, I actually, I understand the logic of Councilor's recommendation that if we cancel one event, we need to cancel them all. I disagree with that. I think comparing a Sandstone concert to Rocky Grass is not the same thing. I think we have an opportunity as a town and to do things that are creative and maybe do something. And I don't think we should always be worried that people are going to be here. I think we should have a plan. And you know, we can paint 6-foot circles that are 10 feet apart in Sandstone Park. And if it's the one thing, I think the town, as Trustee Browning said, really looks forward to that. And it could be a good opportunity for us to, instead of hiding in our homes and worrying about if anybody's wearing a mask, we can actually spend some time socially together. And we need to do it safely. And I would like to see us, you know, everything that we've talked about is how we can stop things so far. I think in some cases, maybe that's a gross overgeneralization, but you know, I don't think just because Rocky Grass canceled, we have to cancel the summer series. And I think that we should try to be creative and think if there's ways that we can do it. If there are local people, local bands, yeah, maybe some people will show up from out of town, but at the same time, they're going to have to play by our rules because it's going to be a lot of people in Lions that are going to worry about Lions and protecting Lions first and foremost. So that's my opinion.
Counselor, what I got from your recommendation was basically the use of town property for events, and canceling one puts us at risk of favoring one event over another. Am I correct in that assumption?
That's the crux of my argument. If we're going to say we're going to cancel these events, is we can't hold them due to essentially force majeure conditions, that it puts that argument in a precarious position if we're saying, well, some events can go forward, but not this one. I'm just saying is a risk to the town. It's not, you know, the end all be all, but that's just a perspective I think the board should consider.
Okay. Any other comments? Trustee Watt?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to follow up on that. I understand that argument as well. A game's a lot more people, a lot different situation than a Sandstone County. We can ask the organizers to come up with creative solutions, and if we feel like it keeps people safe,
Could we have the
then
staff?
that's an option. If they can't hold the event.
You were breaking up, Trustee Watt. You were breaking up through that.
I'm sorry.
Those comments. Do you want to reiterate those for everybody?
Yeah, just real quickly. I think we need to look at each event and whether or not we can hold it safely under the guidelines. And I think I understand the logic of if we use town property for one thing. I think we do. I think this town boards historically have done that, just made a blanket rule. I think we need to look at individual events and log outdoor games is a lot more people in a lot different situation that has a lot less control than a summer concert.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Could the staff do some measurements and see how many concentric? I don't think you can do 6-foot circles you could do in Sandstone Park because you got 4 people in a 6-foot circle. Some that are going to be within 6 feet of the people in the next circle. Maybe 10-foot concentric circles. How many you could actually fit in the area of Sandstone Park where you can listen to the music? And there's other problems there. Kids have to stay in the circle? Kids can't run around during the concerts anymore. Is it feasible can that actually be done? How many people can you fit there? If you have 4 people per 10-foot circle, what are we talking about? I don't know.
Good points. Trustee Miller.
There are some other private properties we could do the summer concert series on if the town property is the issue, which is what I'm hearing from legal. You know, actually there's Kenyon's place. Just have them again.
Or Laverne Johnson Park is much bigger. We could get all our people in there. And if you tell people, if you come to the concerts, you have to wear a mask.
And
if they're going to be close, if they're going to walk, you know, between circles or whatever.
There's
so
big patios. There's the Lions Den could open up the doors right there and play on that stage and have the whole parking lot blocked off. We could do a parking lot party right behind my house. I mean, you know, summer concert series there. I mean, I feel like there are solutions. If it shouldn't be on town property per se, just because of the legal issue.
I mean, the problem is the availability of town space. And if we make, and I'm not saying it doesn't have to be a one size fit all, but this is the consideration you should be taking, is that we are saying, at least to some events, that town space is unavailable to be used because of the health considerations. And now we are saying, well, it is available for certain events. And there may be good reasons, like, because the event is much, much smaller, but you must think about it. It could be bigger than you could anticipate because of the current conditions. And so I just, it's a risky proposition to some extent.
What if we tried?
Any other comments? Kim?
Oh, well, Victoria has one too, but another thought is we could try to use a blend of the drive-through and a different venue, is possibly have the first band play at the high school. I think there's enough room there for people to drive and be in their car, and you could park at the high school and get that feel of music and neighborhood and community, at least for June 11th and maybe June 18th. And we let I don't know how that would fly with the neighborhood back there, because they're not used to live music. But if, it's 6:30 to 8:30, if we did that, and then as the restrictions maybe lessen, could move to a different venue in town. It's an idea.
I like that idea. I think the St. Vrain Valley School District would have to be involved. But I like that idea. I think the neighborhood would love to hear a little music at this point in everybody's life. Administrator Simonson.
Well, we could even, we have Bone Park now. We have a way to drive back to the dog park. There's lots of areas we could do something neat. But if we're going to listen to the science on this, and I heard the mayor say, I want to hear science. Right now, they're saying there's very little risk of infection when you are outdoors. And so when we're having all this park discussion and camping discussion and event discussion, I think we have to listen to that a little bit. And if we want to say to people, if you're coming in, you need to wear a mask, those are some other things. But I think what I was hoping to get out of today was, how do we help benefit our businesses but keep our residents safe, right? So I just think we have to balance some of these things. I don't think the message we want to send to our business community is we're going to stop everything. We're going to close everything in Lyons. We want to open it, but do it following the guidelines.
Trustee Lowell, did you have a comment? No? Passes. Anybody else wish to comment?
Could we ask staff to calculate the number of people that could go to a Thursday night concert in 10-foot concentric circles in Sandstone versus, I kind of like the idea of using Sandstone Park on Thursdays for a local concert. There's parking there that there isn't really. Parking's a problem when you have it at Sandstone. But if you use the parking lot there, make it, have those things on Thursday night.
You mean Bone or Laverne Johnson?
No, I mean Laverne. I don't see Bone.
Okay.
Bone's still under construction. It's going to be through end of the year. It looks like at the pace they're going, so I don't really see how it works in Bone. And I guess you'd have to do some kind of temporary stage at one end of the meadow or something like that. But calculate if we could figure out how many people you could actually have.
Sure.
I guess you'd have to limit it if you have a bunch of out-of-town people showing up. I don't know how you decide who gets the circles and who doesn't, but.
Well, and again, it's a weeknight, so that helps a little bit. Yeah.
Trustee Browning, we're going to recruit you to come out with one of those noodles and be our model.
I got a tape measure. I'll be glad to help. I'll be glad to help do that.
Any other comments? Trustee Miller.
I think, okay, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I think it's going to be important for the businesses to be able to have music in their establishments on their patios, if at all possible, or in their areas whatever that area looks like for them. So say we put out, you know, we decide that we're going to do close down High Street, for example, or whatever, and allow them to utilize High Street for extra social distancing, seating, that sort of thing. I also think that it's important for them to be able to use some of that space for music, because we are such a music-oriented community, and we all are going to be missing that so much this summer, in so many ways, that we could, you know, at least.
Wendy, you muted.
To at least have the businesses to be able to have a small set of live music whenever they want, or at least, you know, a day a week, or whatever whatever we decide. But I think it'll be important to have that piece to help them get back up and running, and to have our live music this summer, because everybody's going to be missing it. So I don't know. That's just my thing. I really think that the businesses, if they're going to be able to have dining, then they should be able to have a small set of live music also, whatever that looks like.
Trustee Rogan.
I totally agree with Trustee Miller. You know, the idea was floated for the Lions Den to have music on their patio and have seating in the parking lot. I also like what if we took the money that we spend on the summer concert series and we paid the bands to, for example, park Joe Kukla's, whatever he was on, in front of somebody's business and play at that business for a half an hour or whatever, and then move on. So have like a roaming concert in front of the businesses so that people can come and get something to eat, listen to some music, the musicians can get paid, people can have some kind of fun.
I like that idea.
I think then you're going to have people gather on the sidewalk, and then social distancing will be a huge problem.
Any other comments? Trustee Caravas.
With all these different topics we've talked on, and we're down now with the music, and we keep coming up with all kinds of scenarios. Victoria, do you and your staff have the bandwidth to do something like this, or whatever we come up with all these topics we're slowly going through over the next 7 days?
We have been planning and preparing to reopen, and I'm kind of surprised to hear tonight that the message I'm hearing is we really aren't. So I think we're ready. The biggest issue for us is signage and how to get that done in a timely manner and be able to be flexible. And of course, the second biggest issue is enforcement. And are we going to, yeah, Wendy, I heard you, even though your mouth is full, you said that's the whole thing, is enforcement, and how far are we going to go with that? And so, no, but other than that, yeah, we're pretty well ready to help people where we need to, and get creative on events.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Enforcement, if you're going to open up the parks 50%, 100%, anything 50% above, as Sergeant Chris said, you cannot control those crowds with the resources we're devoting now. If we're going to do that, then let's talk about how we're going to pay for it, because you cannot manage those crowds without spending some serious money on restrooms, on people at the gate, on law enforcement officers, extra duty staff people, as Sergeant Chris said, might be available. You can't do that without paying the cost. There's no free lunch.
No, what I'm saying is we've been trying to plan different.
We're going to do it. Figure out how much it's going to cost, and let's tell us how much we're going to be paying.
We've been looking at different scenarios, and we've been waiting for you to ask for recommendations. But if you don't want those, that's okay too.
No, I do want them.
We feel it's first come, first serve, and when you hit 50%, the gate is closed.
And how much
Turn
is it
them
going
away.
to cost to have the sheriff's patrol and Trident and a town employee or two at the front
We
desk
don't.
and to keep the restaurants?
Actually, cleaning the restroom every 2 hours is cheaper than porta potties.
Okay.
To tell you the
What does
truth.
that cost?
Yeah, we already have Crystal at the gate. We already have Trident booked.
Okay.
If we're getting some parking revenue, it pays for those things.
Okay.
But, you know, again, we want to hear your philosophical approach. I mean, how do you want to handle this as an elected board? You guys have to tell us. We'll do whatever you guys want.
If you open it up in that respect, and even if it pays for itself, understand that we're all going to get people screaming about people are in the park without masks. There was 20 people, you know, down by the, you know, the fishing drops and everything. If we're all prepared to live with that and realize that you are not going to be able to enforce mask wearing requirements and social distancing requirements in a crowded weekend park without a heavy law enforcement presence that we have to pay for. And if we want to pay for it, let's do it. But realize that you're not going to get the compliance with social distancing and COVID protection if you put 200 to 300 people in those parks on the weekends. It's not going to happen. It's unrealistic.
It's all about
we're going to live with it,
spacing.
or we're going to pay a lot to prevent it or to deal with it.
Go ahead, Town Administrator Simonson.
We would have to, throughout the parks, do the same thing. We would have to have signage saying on each of the drop landings, you know, social distancing signs. The mask order right now is in effect till June 15th. Who knows? At that point, if the governor comes out and says, okay, outside, you don't need those anymore, then they're going to, you know, we just have to have the ability to meet regularly and react and be able to you know, be nimble in this. I don't think we can wait a month in between talking about COVID.
What you saw at the Black Bear Hole last weekend and the October, November holes will happen. If you open bone and you open sandstone, even 50%, that's what you're going to get. And I'm personally prepared to live with it. It doesn't bother me that much. But if we think that we're going to be able to keep people 6 feet apart in those parks with hundreds of people in there, that's just not realistic. That's not going to happen unless you want to hire 5 deputy sheriffs to patrol all Saturday and Sunday. And I don't think we're going to do that.
I think we're discussing expenses again, and I don't know. Again, I'll state for the record, I don't know how much we're going to be allocated by the government's executive order, but I do know one thing: that the Parks Fund is probably in the best position to deal with some of these expenses. Is that correct, David?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now it has a strong balance. And we do have some extra duty already budgeted for through the Sheriff's Department. But again, I think it depends on the plan and what it is we're recommending and what it is we want to do. Extra duty can add up quickly.
Yeah, sure. I gotcha. Any other comments? Trustee Lowell.
I would consider a partial opening of Laverne and Bone Park, but only if we had the parking restrictions that I had mentioned earlier in place. It's easy to control access to Laverne Johnson Park. You've only got one way out. It's less so for a place like Bone Park where people can filter in anywhere along 2nd Avenue. So I would listen to a proposal for opening the parks halfway perhaps, but only if we had those parking restrictions in place. And by the way, I know I brought them up and I had mentioned some specific places, and at some point in the discussion, an emergency ordinance was mentioned. Would there have to be a formal motion tonight to specify no parking, for example, during the COVID-19 crisis in the following designated spots? Is that necessary, or is that just direction to staff?
I think it would be direction of staff at this point. We haven't noticed any separate parking restriction resolution. I mean, we in our existing COVID-19 emergency declaration, there are parking restrictions for the parks, but I think closing public town streets is probably a different matter entirely. That probably requires a separate resolution that would have to be considered at the next board meeting or a future board meeting.
Okay, so it wouldn't be anything we would have to do tonight. It would have to be formed up. Like
Yeah.
if I were to form up a resolution, I would give that to the town clerk. Is that true? For further refinement?
I think it would have to come to both me and the town clerk for review, and then we'd have to be noticed 24 hours prior to whatever meeting, and you know, and also to the mayor. So the mayor is usually charged with setting the agenda, so it would be a combination of, you know, really a team effort to put that on the agenda, and it needs 24 hours notice before you can do it. Even if it's, you know, if there's an emergency resolution, there's ways around that, but we would request there be at least 24 hours notice. And so the sooner that could come to us for review, the better, or direct us to create such a, you know, if this board's will, direct staff to create such a restriction on parking, and with as much specificity as you can, so we can start working on it.
You know, even as I sit here, I'm sort of scribbling furiously some of my ideas on it, but I wouldn't want to go forward and waste everybody's time unless there was a consensus tonight that that was the proper way, the proper procedure.
David, does the bridge still go over the creek further down on 4th into Bone, directly into Bone?
Are you talking about the new backside bridge into Bone Park off of 4th?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay. So you have to understand that people will figure out a way, beside the obvious way, on 2nd to get into Bone. And one of the easier ways is going to be that access over that bridge, basically what I call the back way into Bone. And what that's going to do is create a lot of parking in the confluence.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
that I've already mapped out the parking restrictions to include elements of Amelia Ave and 4th Avenue. So I was thinking.
Good. Trustee Rogan.
So if we could, I'd like to take a step back here because I want to make sure that I understand what the objective for this meeting is tonight. And Victoria, I hear you about having meetings more often regarding these issues, because as we can see from the fulsome discussion, there's a lot to talk about. So is it correct that coming out of this meeting tonight, we should be providing direction to staff to prepare whatever it is that they need to prepare in the event that Safer at Home is lifted?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think even if Safer at Home isn't lifted, we need to know if we want anything more restrictive than the state or the county. That's the other part of it. And then we need to also consider in this discussion, if Boulder County and areas around us are going to close their parks and waterways, they are going to come here. And yeah.
Well, that makes the situation even more dire.
It makes it very dire. How do you help your local businesses? That's why things maybe like camping and RV camping might be palatable, because those people probably will come to the businesses. I think a lot of your weekend people playing in the river, they're going to maybe go to the dairy bar or some of the convenience stores to pick up some, something refreshment wise, but really helping the businesses have to be a local thing, or grabbing the people driving through.
Understood. Any other comments? All right, let's move on. Town Hall, facilities.
Trustee Caravas has a
Oh, I'm
comment.
sorry, Trustee Caravas.
That's okay. Both of the comments of whether we open, close, what other towns do. Human nature is human nature. They're going to come here anyway. No matter what we do, we can put a fence around this town. People are going to find a way. They're going to hike over, hike around. It's just the way we're social creatures. It's in our genome. That's just how we are. We can say we're all closed, Boulder's closed. People know where the water is there to go there. Ski slopes closed and the highways were packed with cars and people were hiking up and skiing anyway. That went on all winter long. I think it still goes on because there's enough snow up there. I'd like to think I'm a little bit more of a realist. People are going to come up here no matter what we say, what we do. All we can try to do is minimize the exposure to our citizens, help our businesses the best we can, because our businesses are up against two choices. One is they open the best they can without regard to what current law is and get fined, lose their business license, lose their health permits, or wait, as we diddle daddle around, and they go bankrupt and go out of business. Either way, they're out of business. Either way, long-term for Lions, it's bad. The end game is bad. So just saying, if we can minimize the best we can, plan for, the best we can. Human nature is human nature. People flood this town. What are we going to do? Demand a sheriff call the SWAT team? Not going to happen. So we really got to think about, we have great ideas coming up and we're doing some good things, but we need to help our businesses. We need to help the staff figure out what we're going to do. And no matter what we do, good chance it's not going to work and someone's going to bypass it and do something anyway.
Good point, sir. Trustee Miller.
I have one more thing to say. And I think it's pertinent to understand that we still do not know what this, once the orders are lifted and once these places open up, what it's going to look like for this disease or this infection to increase, right? We don't know what the numbers are going to look like. So this is a fluid motion that we're going through here. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to plan this for the entire summer. We don't have to, decide right now what we're gonna, we have to do this, and this for the next, 3 months. We might want to be something that we look at once a month and say, okay, what does this look like? Is this working? Do we need to change this? I feel like it's such it's definitely unknown and it's changing every day. And it seems like it's a little preemptive to just make it a blanket thing. I personally think that the parks should be closed still through the month of June, but in July, maybe at that point, it'll look like we want to open them up. So I just think that we should take it a little bit slowly and not just be like, okay, here we are. This is what we're doing. And this is, what's happening for the whole next 3 months or 4 months or whatever. So.
Trustee Waugh.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's a lot of different impacts and a lot of different things to consider. Just procedurally, I'd like to suggest perhaps a good way for us to maybe move forward on some of this. Under agenda item 5, there's a copy of the Safer at Home Matrix. And I know Victoria's going to smile when I say this because she's been trying to get us to fill this out for about 3 weeks now. But it's a really good, I think, form that we can see what the state has and see what the county has. My personal opinion is we should just copy what the county has personally, but that's just my thing. But we can go through, why don't we walk through that And that way we can give staff the direction they need in terms of what we're going to do for each one of those components. And, you know, I just give that to the board for their consideration in terms of a way that we can hopefully get off this call before 1:45 this morning.
Did you want to address item 5, Madam Administrator? I know it's an issue that's dear to your heart.
Well, it was just a way to try to coordinate all of the different areas that we need to be considering and looking at what the state has in effect. And again, at the very top of this, it says it's, you know, the safer at home is only for another, what do we got, 6 days. What the state is doing in each of those areas, what the county is doing, and do you have a preference to follow? You know, in our case, it'd be the county was probably more restricted. They would only have it here if it's more restrictive than the state. And is there any area where you want to be even more restrictive? Because if we're okay with what the state and the county are doing, we don't need to change our emergency declaration at this point. But if this was just a way of topics to discuss, and I think we hit upon several of them tonight, but there's also a few more to go whenever we decide to meet again. So it would just be going through these. Face coverings at this point are only strongly encouraged. They're not arresting people if they don't have them on, unless it's a group situation that's being, you know, violent. Do we want to do something more locally than just strongly encouraging them?
Can I, I mean, there is, the Boulder County Public Health Order does require facial coverings in public where social distancing cannot be maintained, and there is a penalty of $5,000.
Yes.
And not that it's being enforced, but I mean, technically on the books, there is a requirement that is mandatory.
Yeah, and that's listed at the bottom under the penalties.
Trustee Rogan.
So, so my point about face coverings, and Attorney Dittman brings up something that I thought a lot about, is I am not suggesting that we be stricter than Boulder County. I'm suggesting we message it in a different way that might be more effective. And that is, you must have a face covering if you're doing a face-to-face transaction. Both parties must have a face covering. Of course, that's covered under the 6-foot rule, but it's just more pointed, you know. And I talked to someone I know who works at a restaurant who, you know, people walk up to the window and order and they don't have a face mask, and she doesn't want to have to tell somebody who she doesn't know from someplace she doesn't know that he's got to put a face mask on, because that's dangerous. But if she has a sign she can point to saying, the town of Lyons requires you to put a face mask on, or I'm not going to serve you, then that's helpful. So, and I think it protects all parties. You know, like I said, we've got 3 tools to use, so let's use them.
Any other comments in regard to that? So, Trustee Miller.
One more thing. So when I was up in Estes Park, they have signs on all their businesses that says, you cannot come in this business if you do not have a mask on, period. End of story. Every single one says that. So it's very obvious that you have to have a mask on. You're not coming in the business if you don't have one on. So we can think about that too.
Trustee Rogan.
Sorry, just one more thing to say, and that is, there are a number of communities that have mask orders, including Westminster, Lafayette. I think North Glen is about to put one in place. And I believe the city of Longmont City Council just gave their town administrator permission to do a mask order. So this is not something that's like, you know, oh, Lyons is so extra restrictive. This is just really defining it. And as Attorney Dittman knows, I worked on partial language for a resolution about that I would be happy to share, that has some definitions and also some rules around who doesn't need to wear a mask, for example, if you're under a certain age or you have a medical condition. So I promise that's the last thing I have to say about that tonight.
Just to add to that list, Aspen, Denver, Fort Collins, and Wheat Ridge also have mask resolutions mostly.
So, I mean, could we get back, because we got off track a little tiny bit, to the town hall facility reopening phasing plan?
Boulder County is starting to open some of their offices on June 1st. And we are wanting some direction from the board. If that is something you want us to work toward, it doesn't have to be June 1st. You know, we can make it a moving week by week assessment if you'd like. But we are trying to prepare for the time that will happen, you know, making sure we have enough. We do have some of the plastic guards now up at the front desk, and we would only allow one person at a time into town hall. But we just are wanting to know if that's something the board is wanting us to gear up for at some point. We do get a lot of calls for notaries, and right now we do meet them outside and ask them to bring their own pen kind of thing. But just some of those services that locals again are wanting and needing, and just wanting some direction from the board. At what point do they think they will be ready for that? Because I need to bring some people back who are working from home, and I'd like to be able to give them some notice on that.
Trustee Rogan.
I would defer to how safe staff feels, and how just, you know, I would look to you guys for guidance. Like if you feel like this is something you can do safely with social distancing and masks and sanitizing and all that good stuff, I believe it should be up to you.
That's reasonable.
Anybody else?
Tim Browning?
Yeah, I'm fine with the staff moving toward limited reopening. And I think our staff is perfectly capable of determining what safety measures are needed. So I see no reason to keep town hall permanently closed. So.
Trustee Watt?
I concur. I think, you know, non-critical, just follow the guidelines for non-critical business reopening. I think that makes perfect sense.
We were even thinking of maybe a gradual, like, you know, what if town hall would be open on Mondays, you know, Mondays and Wednesdays or something, just so people can get some of those basic services met.
Trustee Lowell?
We're only concerned with the main entrance, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but this doesn't include people who would go back to speak to you or to the town clerk. It's just,
it would be, yeah, it would be by appointment only to meet with someone, and we would try to have those meetings outside.
Okay,
right now.
I'll leave it up to your good judgment, but I'm in favor of opening it up.
Trustee Miller?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of your call and the staff if they feel comfortable enough. If you feel like, you know, 2 days a week is going to work, do that first, maybe, or you know, whatever you think. I mean, you know better than we do in this case, I think.
Yeah, I think we have a few staff that do not feel safe yet, but for the majority of those in the front area, you know, dealing specifically with the customers every day, we have some that are comfortable. So we would like to try on a gradual basis at this point if we can.
Trustee Caravas? Your opinion, sir.
Asking a Greek for their opinion, you know what kind of trouble you're in, don't you? Yeah, no, I concur with everybody. And I think Victoria Simons knows what's best for her staff and her office. If they want to open 2 days a week, give it a shot for a couple of weeks, maybe add a third day towards the end of the month, great. Not working out, she can always back down. And I agree that some of our citizens need to get some things done and, you know, help out. And if an extra staff person or two can come in and help the rest of the staff that were doing all the extra scanning and things, that would be beneficial.
Trustee Rogan?
I'd just like to say that if somebody doesn't feel comfortable coming in to town hall, that they be allowed to work remotely until they do feel comfortable.
So you have a consensus of the board, Madam Administrator, to move forward with the partial opening of town hall. Boy, we got something. We got a decision. We got our first decision. All right. What do we want to, what's our final determination on? Let's start with events. Where do we want to go on events? Do we want to take counselors' advice? What do we want to do?
And it doesn't have to be all events. Our first event coming up is outdoor concerts, June 11th, which we could just push back even till July and wait to see if things are better.
How does the board feel about that? Trustee Rogan?
I'd like to cancel all the events in June and then revisit maybe the second or third week in June.
In July, you mean?
Well, revisit toward the end of June to see about July.
Okay, that's fine. Trustee Waugh?
I'd like to cancel all town events with the exception of Sandstone concerts and work to find a way to have those concerts as scheduled, perhaps in Meadow Park.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the Meadow Park option. I don't know if we can implement it by June the 11th. Maybe we can, but that would be my direction. Let's see if that's feasible in either Sandstone or Laverne Park, where there's more parking. So let's figure out how many people we could fit there, and we know about how many people attend most of those things, and we can do that. Let's do it. I think that's a good idea.
All right, Trustee Lowell?
Yes, I say cancel all events except the Sandstone concerts and seek an alternate venue for them. I think Laverne Johnson Park sounds like a great idea.
Trustee Miller?
Yeah, I like the idea of the drive-in concert park in Laverne Johnson or wherever it's feasible. I think that could be pretty fun, actually. So yeah, if you can pull that off, I'm for that.
Trustee Caravas?
I pretty much agree with the rest of my colleague statements. It's June 11th is a little close to try to implement everything. Put it off till July 1, see where we're at. I think a lot more information we're going to know about here coming the next couple of weeks. And we try one in early July. If it works out great, goes off like a hitch, go another one. If we have some struggles, we back off an extra week. But so yeah, I like the idea of pulling off another month and then giving it a go slowly and see what happens.
And I concur with my colleagues also. But the outdoor games in good old days, are we all in agreement to cancel those two events? Trustee Rogan?
Well, outdoor games right now is scheduled for September, correct?
That's correct. September 6th.
So I don't know that I'm comfortable canceling that right now. I think that we should revisit it. I mean, right now it seems to me like there's no way that could happen safely, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. And I would hate to get to August and go, oh shoot, we should have not canceled those. So is it possible to put that decision off for a little while?
Of course it is. And good old days?
Good old days, I'd like to see if we can postpone that decision as well, but September sounds like a better time frame to me.
All right, Trustee Waugh, your opinion, sir?
Yeah, I think just because of the nature of those events where you have people moving around and looking at different things and so forth, as opposed to the Sandstone concerts where people stay kind of in one place, I just think that it's going to be very difficult to maintain social distancing during those events. I share Trustee Rogan's concern if we can put it off. I know we're kind of balancing how much we'd have to pay if we keep going and don't cancel it, but I think at this point maybe we don't make a decision if we can put it off.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I thought that we spent a lot of time in our long meeting Monday night getting an opinion from town council that the good outdoor games contract could be called off because the Bone Park was unavailable. And it's not a matter, you can't, if you postpone the decision, the promoter's going to be out there spending advertising revenue and it's going to cost you money to do that. I don't see how that event can be successful in September. For one thing, there's low river flow, so you change the nature of events. I think it'll be a financial flop. The town will lose money. And I don't think you can just wait till midsummer and plan it. You have to do a lot of advanced preparation for it. And we spent a lot of time the other night deciding if we could get out of that contract. And I thought that the direction we'd already given was to do so. And if we can revise that now, we're going to have to get back all into the contract provisions and talk about how much money it's going to cost to pay a venture fit and how much of their promotional expenses we're going to have to reimburse. I thought we made that decision already. Now, in good old day, I know Laverne would like to have that, but that's a money loser, not a money maker for the town. And it's a very small amount. And I think the amount of time and effort it puts together, somebody said, the main part of it that's been attended in recent years has been the children's events where they all go from station to station in the elementary school playground. I don't see that happening this summer. The school's not even sure they're going to have kids in the playground in the fall. I think that one just needs to be put off for a year, would be my opinion.
Trustee Lowell.
Yeah, I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Browning. I thought we had made that decision on the outdoor games. In addition, I don't think it's something we can just turn on and turn off at a moment's notice. We have to make a commitment to it. So I would say that's a no-go, and unfortunately, good old day is a no-go as well, in my opinion.
Trustee Miller.
I have no further opinion than those of my peers.
The previous two peers or the peers?
Okay, so
Before that.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning, I agree with 100%.
Thank you. Thank you. And Trustee Caravas.
The same as the last three peers.
Well, then the Board of Trustees has a unanimous direction for staff to proceed with finding a solution on the summer games, whatever that may be, and canceling the outdoor games in good old days. Did I interpret that correctly? Yes, thank you. This is the one. Town Parks Plan. Comments? Trustee Rogan?
I worry a lot about enforcement. I worry a lot that if we open the town parks, we're going to see what happened in Boulder yesterday happen here. And then we'll be in a position of, do we have to close them on an emergency basis, and how do we do that? So, you know, it's a tough one. I'm in favor of not allowing camping for the month of June. You know, I feel like the situation is so fluid that every single time I open my computer, there's new information that informs a different viewpoint. So I'd kind of like to take closures and openings step by step. And so that's how I feel about that.
Trustee Waugh.
I do have some concerns. I do appreciate staff putting together their recommendations. I would be in favor of opening the parks perhaps in a couple of weeks. I don't necessarily think we need to wait until July 1st, but I'd like to see how some of the others go and some lessons that learned. I think even the things that have happened in Boulder, you know, are pretty recent. And I think we're going to see perhaps other communities that can open those. So I'd like to set a goal to revisit this maybe at our June 1st board meeting, and at this point maintain the current policy as they relate to town parks.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I'm comfortable with the Parks and Recreation recommendations on this to move toward reopening them. Those recommendations don't specify a particular date. But I think we need to move in the direction of partially opening the parks, and I think we all need to recognize what the real world is, and we're going to have some crowds there, and not everybody's going to be socially distant, and they're not going to all wear masks, and I'm prepared to live with that.
Trustee Lowell. Unmute, please, sir.
Like I said before, I'd be in favor of a partial opening of the parks so long as there are parking restrictions outside, so that the limitations that we set on half the parking places in the park or half the picnic tables or whatever criteria we use can be enforced. You can't do that when you have areas where people can park and walk in. Now, listening to what Trustee Carabas has said before, yeah, I was one of those guys. I snuck into a lot of places, and as you said, Mayor Angelo, people will find a way. So what we need to do is we need to take at least the most precautions we can to choke off the source, and that would be the parking restrictions. So, yeah, okay, we'll try a partial opening of the parks, but we also, hand in hand to that, we also need to choke off the parking outside.
Trustee Miller.
I don't know. This is a tough one. I think that 2 weeks is going to give us further information. I think that we should revisit this in 2 weeks and see what happens. Because, wait, when is the order? The order, let's see.
It goes through the end of the day, Monday, Memorial Day.
Monday, Memorial Day.
So they did that on purpose, so those big crowds couldn't be there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Memorial Day is the 25th. And God, I'm thinking like June 15th we'll know more. That's 3 weeks, right? 1, 2. Yeah. I think that's a fairly good going to be a fairly good indicator on what it's going to be like out there. So I would like to revisit it on the 15th board meeting personally, but I'll do whatever the rest of you want to do. I hesitate to open them too soon, but I also understand the other side and know that people will come anyway. So like if there's no enforcement, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's my whole thing. We all heard what Sergeant Chris said. So it doesn't really matter to me in either way, I guess.
Trustee Carvas.
This one I'm kind of all over the board on, but I'm definitely leaning towards the recommendation, or actually more so leaning towards the recommendation of our Parks and Rec Committee. I have faith in Mr. Cosgrove and town staff. And as some of my colleagues have said, the next 12 days, now till June 1st, before our June 1st meeting, we're going to see 2 weekends, one holiday weekend, a lot of warm weather, some nice temperatures, river flows. Whether we like it or not, no matter what the rules, current rules, or the rules will be on those days are, we're going to see a lot. I think our June 1st meeting will probably have a much better picture of what the rest of June is going to be like anyway. So I would go with the Park and Rec's decision of a partial opening and see where we go. And doing it right now, I would say put it off until June 1st. Let them implement what they think they can starting sometime after June 1st. Because I think, like I said, the next 12 days, I think we're going to see a lot. We'll know a lot more from that June 1st meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning, did you have an additional comment?
I did. I wanted to comment on what Trustee Lowell suggested. I support his suggestions on the no parking areas that we can control. that's something the Parks and Rec Commission talked about extensively, that they thought that needed to be done. There was some question about how far we could go. The caveat with that is it's going to cost us extra money to do that. We're going to have to put up the no parking signs. We're going to have to pay somebody some extra money to hand out parking tickets if people ignore them. I'm comfortable with paying that money. I'm also comfortable with paying for extra Boulder County Sheriff's Office deputies hours on Saturdays and Sundays, knowing that's going to be necessary. We can't handle this partial reopening with the staff we've got now. It's going to cost us extra money. We hope that the money available from the state that the governor's talked about will be able to do that. It will be basically extra COVID precautions that we wouldn't have had to do otherwise. So I'm in favor of what Trustee Lowell suggested. It's going to cost some money, but I'm in favor of incurring the expense and hoping the state can pay for it. If not, we'll find a way to pay for it.
Parks Director Cosgrove, are you still on?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Is there a way to, in addition to Trustee Lowell's suggestion, to block that bridge to the back way into Bone?
Yeah, we could use barricades or caution tape. I don't know as if we could physically block it and make it totally impossible that somebody couldn't get across it.
And maybe get some signage that says, I don't know what it could say, no park access. I'm just worried about that back door and a lot of people just congesting that neighborhood. I mean, that's going to be a lot of no parking signs.
Put Doug Miller's dog at the foot of the bridge. Nobody's going to come across.
There you go. Now you're talking. I mean, I understand all of this, but my concern with this many people coming to town is a health concern still. And I mean, this is a very difficult decision to reconcile. I mean, you know, we're going to be talking about hundreds of people, you know, and we don't know where they came from. Nobody's been tested yet, you know, so I mean, the capability of this creating a health dilemma, those possibilities exist, regardless of whether people think that the virus can be spread outside or not. If you're close enough, I believe personally from what I've read, that the virus can be spread even outside. Oh.
Trustee Lowell.
Yeah, no, Mayor Angelo, it wasn't my intention to block the back access to Bone Park. I think that needs to be kept open for locals. It's a popular walking area. My intention was to post Mealy Ave, portions of 4th Avenue, whatever it takes, to no parking. So I don't mind the pedestrian traffic of locals through there. I'm trying to prevent on-street parking, rampant all-street parking there, and then accessing the back entrance. So it wasn't my intention to block the bridge, just to prevent the parking.
No, I understand that, but to prevent the parking, can you hear me, by the way?
I can.
Okay, because I lost my screen, so I'm re-entering this way. It wasn't that. It was that that parking, if we close off the parking in other areas, you know, I also snuck into a lot of places in my younger days. People are going to find that access in and all that parking in that neighborhood. That was my only concern. But I think the consensus of the board, if I'm not mistaken, is to delay this decision until we get more information. Am I correct in that assumption? I'll take a comment from anybody who wishes to comment.
Mayor Angelo?
Yes.
Could I take it upon myself to contact Northern Water, the person that I know there, to find out if they are aware of the situation at the Northern Water parking lot and to see if we might have permission, if necessary, to post that.
Madam Administrator, can you provide Trustee Lowell with
Trustee
any?
Lowell, as long as you, if you don't mind connecting up with Director Cosgrove first, because we do have an agreement with them, so I want to make sure you know what that says before you call them.
Okay, thank you.
Just touch base on that before we do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, because they'll be turning that water on anytime, and that changes the whole dynamic there.
Thanks.
So, Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Mayor, I would kind of rephrase the consensus there. I think there's a consensus that, we're not ready on June 1st to implement all these things that we've talked about, 50% reopening, parking restrictions. So the date's a little bit uncertain. I would say the direction to staff, though, would be proceed forward along the lines that the Parks and Recreation Commission indicated. But how long will it take to print up the signage? How long will it take to line up the extra deputies? How long will it take to line up the parking enforcement? We don't know that. But basically give them direction to proceed. And when they have those things ready to implement it, then you could do it. Whether that's June 5th, June 10th, who knows? But I think they need some lead time to line up all those things. And I think the direction that I heard from most people was move in that direction. But the actual date to implement that really depends on when you're ready.
Okay, I concur with that. And how about the rest of the board? Trustee Rogan, Trustee Waugh, Trustee Lowell? Do you concur with Mayor Pro Tem's approach? Good. Trustee Miller? Trustee Caravas? I think we're going to get that money from the state, Madam Administrator, so I'd proceed with making those signs as quickly as possible. Oh.
May I ask a question just for clarity to make sure we're all?
Yes.
Okay. So tent camping, we can allow if we have signage, or is it parking? Sorry, I missed that.
Not until further notice.
Further notice from the board or further notice when staff has the parking areas closed and?
So my understanding is that the direction that we were just talking about was to implement the proposed recommendations from the Park and Rec Board, which include that. Camping, it includes tent camping, 50 to 60% of tent sites, check out distance between sites and confirm.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just looking at those requirements or the recommendations from the Parks and Rec, and that's, I think, what Mayor Pro Tem had suggested, that to move forward with their recommendations.
If I might, just to make sure we're on the same page, Kim, they were looking at the document that they were presented with, which includes the PRC's recommendation, which would be coming back to them with a timeline when we get all these things in place for getting this put in place after, which would be sometime after June 1st.
Trustee Rogan.
Yeah, and I think, Kim, I'm guessing that what you're wondering is, oh my gosh, so do I tell these people I have to cancel the reservations or not? And which, yeah, right. So, and because we don't know exactly when all of this is going to be ready and when we're going to say, okay, we're ready to, lift the gate or pull the trigger or whatever you want to say. My question is, how do we let Kim know which reservations she needs to cancel and which she doesn't need to cancel at this point?
Well, certainly the ones through May, right? She said Memorial Day weekend. There was some, correct, Kim?
Oh, everything's been canceled for tent camping through May 26th, because that's when Safer at Home was. But we do have some folks who want to tent camp during the week. And I'm honestly asking just because we've talked about so many things, like allowing tent camping during the week. And I don't know that the Parks and Rec Commission, and Dave can speak to this, though we were both on the call, is as concerned about the tent camping as, you know, the volume of people we can get on a nice weekend. So yeah, I'm just looking for guidance of, do we want to keep tent camping closed through a particular date so I can let the guests who are currently reserved there know? And I understand the rest of the park. That's a different wicket of what we manage.
How many campers do you have booked for that week? Just
Sure,
that week?
Let me look, hang on.
But if we waited till June 1st, we're really just canceling that weekend and the last weekend of May, basically.
Yeah, during the week where it's not as busy usually.
Yeah.
But it does mean then we have a restroom issue.
Right.
My thought on that is you start the tent camping when you're able to implement the rest of it. When you're able to open, if you decide you're ready to implement the 50% parking lot opening and you've got the front entrance thing manned and you've got the extra patrols lined up for the weekends, then you start the tent camping, but not before.
I would agree with that.
I would as well.
If that's the direction of the board, then that is, we have people starting to camp on Thursday, the 28th.
I don't think staff's going to be ready by then, from what I heard. Unless you're ready to start the whole 50% parking and Trustee Lowell's no parking things in the streets. I'm saying you do it all at once. You may have to cancel some more tent campers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's going to have to be at least June 1st.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of what, I mean, we're revisiting June 1st, right? That's when we decided to revisit all of this, was June 1st, correct?
Yes.
Am I, okay. So I say we don't allow tent camping until we revisit on June 1st. That's my thought.
So maybe cancel everything through June 4th, and we may be able to have that weekend, but we can decide on June 1st.
Yes.
Because you need to give people have to get a little bit of heads up.
Yep.
Yes, that makes sense.
And Kim, you'll just need to tell the people that weekend, maybe, hopefully, but we're not sure until we won't know until June 1st.
Okay.
She's used to saying that.
So that's the tent camping. I understand then the parking in the other parks at Bone and LMJ and the restrooms. And then it also is the same for Sandstone, correct? Keep the restrooms closed and keep the portage on as it is there. Okay. Thanks for the direction.
Okay.
We have one other parks facility issue before we leave this. Other places, including the state and the county, are now saying your like our sport court can be open, skate parks can be open with signage saying no team events. So if you want to go shoot hoops with your son, you can. If you want to go play pickleball, you can, but no team get-togethers. And then our skate park isn't quite ready, so we're covered there. But as soon as it is, I'd like to see that open.
And right next to those facilities is the playground, which is closed.
It's been doing
We're
okay.
gonna have to have separate signage for that. Okay.
I have a suggestion. I have a simple suggestion. It may not be so simple, but on the basketball tennis court, we got this issue about sport courts. We really have one of them. It's lockable. It's been locked up now. Why not limit occupancy to 4 people? That lets two couples play doubles tennis and lets up to 4 people shoot baskets. Make it simple.
Trustee Lowell.
I just want to say that I admire the young man who's been climbing over the fence and shooting hoops every night.
Every day, every day.
He's got a heck of a jump shot, and he's going to be a great asset to the school.
There you go.
No, so, you know, they will find a way. I do agree with the limitation of 4 people. That may work.
And then we can also sign it like we do the dog park gate, that the gate itself is a high risk area, you know, for multiple people touching it. But it sounds like there's some new regulations coming out today from CDC about touch surfaces not being as bad as they thought as well. So anyway, but if, I think, you know, again, I try to look at this as both, how do we best serve our own residents, you know, as well as facing the issues we have on weekends in the summer. But like you, that one gentleman, he's there every night and he jumps the fence and I never tell him no.
You can't tell him no. That's our future star, Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
The parks, just real quickly, I know we're running out of time. You can get ridiculous on this stuff. And the reason I said make it simple is Longmont had new rules yesterday for the use of their courts. And their tennis court rule is you shouldn't throw the ball back to the other player with your hand. You should pick it up with your shoe or your tennis racket and hand it to the other one on top of your tennis racket. And I have these visions of these people in white referee suits with whistles going around. You know, that's a foul, that's a foul. We don't need to get that detailed. And nobody can possibly enforce that. Just set a maximum limit and go with it.
I had to go do my howl.
Oh.
My neighborhood's howling.
So our last item is our resolution.
What about your resolution? Yes. Are we doing anything tonight with businesses other than helping them maneuver through the new regulations, providing signage? Maybe Leg can consider a subcommittee for COVID related.
Outdoor music.
Or outdoor space. It sounds like Trustee Juan Rogan, there's a group who's interested in exploring that further.
Trustee Rogan.
Yeah, I think we need to know what's possible. So I would like staff to say, okay, here's what it'll take to, for example, close High Street. Here's what it'll take for the whole liquor licensing thing. And so what I would like to see is for all of the suggestions we've received, and we've received many, and Kim, I'm sure, has filled you in about the EVC suggestions too. I would just like to see maybe in a grid what's possible legally, how much it would cost, and what it would take to make things happen, and then we can decide from there how to prioritize. And I'm super curious what Trustee Wah also has to think about that.
Trustee Wah.
Trustee Rogan, you think I might have an opinion about this? Is that what you're indicating? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there are a couple things that we can do right now, and I'd like to see if we can figure out the budget or the process to do that. So I think number one, after we pass the resolution tonight, with whatever that resolution says, I would like to see the town provide uniform signage for all of the businesses. I think that just makes a really good thing. So, you know, I think that's something that we can do immediately. I'd also like to have us look, and again, I don't know how we do this, I'd like to figure out a way that we can get some PPP gathered. So as a resource, and if we can work with the chamber, that's great. And I'm sure Trustee Rogan and I are happy to lead that effort and talk to who we need to. But if there was budget to get some PPE, to get some sanitizer, I'll tell you one of the things that as a business owner, I'm having trouble getting is thermometers. So, you know, there's some things like that that I'd like to be able to offer to our businesses. And I don't know how we fund it exactly, but I think maybe some of the state money might be a way to do that. But that's my opinion.
There's no question that that's specifically what the state money is earmarked for. So I would move, Madam Administrator, I would move as quickly as possible to supply the funds to support our businesses in regard to protective gear, sanitizers, signage, or anything else that we could do to help people open up as quickly as possible. And we're going to get the money from the state to reimburse the general fund. So I think that we should move on that immediately. I don't have a problem with that. First of all, it's not going to be that much money. And second of all, we're going to get the money from the state. We're going to get something. Let's use it for the benefit of our businesses now, right now.
Could we ask our subcommittee to maybe send out a follow-up survey to those who responded to find out specifically how much, you know, like what do you need? What do you need? Masks? Do you need gloves? Do you need, and how much? So that when I can find a stockpile of that stuff, the thing I can't find is sanitizer wipes. Can't find them yet. But other things are starting to open up. And as they take down our Office of Emergency Management in Boulder County, they said they have excess gloves and masks we can put orders in for. So I think we can get those. I just kind of need to know quantities. Are we talking 500? Are we talking 5,000?
Right, and so the EVC already sent out a survey, so I would ask Brianna or Aaron if they have insight into that, because that work might already be done.
Okay, great. We have some resources to follow up with through the county.
Hi, everyone. This is Laverne.
Hello, Mrs. Laverne.
I've been waiting for audience and you haven't called it.
Well, it was earlier in the meeting. I apologize, but out of respect for you, Mrs. Laverne, I'll allow you can speak. Go ahead.
I want to report on the museum that we are going to open virtually, and people will be there working on their projects. And then when the governor says we can open social distancing, we'll do that. And I will send out our brochure, which is mostly telling what we're going to do. We have some programs this summer that will be outside. And I wanted to report because we're scheduled to open June 1st. So any questions? And thank you.
Thank you. So can we move on to the resolution? Is that acceptable with everybody? Yes, Trustee Brown. I mean,
one quick comment to second what Trustee Wass said. Prioritize the signage because, and Trustee Miller mentioned what they do in Estes Park, and I agree. Until we can get uniform signage up that takes the pressure off the local businesses to do their own enforcement and adds the weight of the town through the signage behind whatever requirements are enforced, even if it's just the existing requirements, that should be prioritized, and that's something the town should provide at its cost and source the PPE as best we can.
Okay, so we have been to every business with signs a few times. Are we saying we want to mandate one in their window?
The town will provide uniform signs for all businesses.
We have.
Yes.
Pardon?
We have.
Okay. I haven't seen, I don't see them.
I haven't been communicated as a business owner about it. I don't.
Because I don't know if Brianna's on here or Kim, but I know we made the signs that are available through the Boulder County business site. And I know they're available. I see Aaron saying they're available on their website, but I believe Brianna went door to door and asked every business if they wanted one, but I understand. We'll follow up on that.
Maybe we've got this a little bit out of order, but if we do a mask requirement, then you're going to need different signs.
Got it. Got it.
Trustee Logan.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Browning, because I have kind of a point of process question. And that is, so on Monday night, we extended the emergency resolution as it was for 3 weeks. And I feel like I know that I would like to introduce a mask ordinance, which would then affect the signage. And so I'm wondering, chicken and egg, like how we go about doing this. Because we got 3 weeks with the current resolution. So how do we move forward?
Trustee Rogan, if you would allow me to respond to that. So I think there's a couple different options. One, and I'll turn my video here. You could make that change tonight if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And we could change it to go into effect whenever you want. The other option is you can instruct staff, if the board agrees, to make this change to go into effect whenever we renew the resolution, which we could do on June 1st if you wanted to. I mean, we can basically extend, shorten, change the dates in that resolution whenever there's a meeting in the board. So it just depends on when you want this to go into effect. I think maybe the easiest thing, if you're comfortable waiting to the next board meeting, is to instruct staff to make changes the board agrees we need a mask requirement, and we can bring it before the board on June 1st. But it's completely up to the board about how they would like to do this.
So is it the pleasure of the board to add a mandatory mask provision to the emergency resolution? Trustee Wong.
I just have something on point of order, just with the signs and so forth. I think if we make the signs in the right way, you could have them be changeable. So there could be masks and are required, are suggested, or what have you, so that it's not every time we change something, we have to make a new sign. I think there's a couple of things, and I think the Boulder County signs are great, but I think we need to Mayor Pro Tem's comment, I think we need them to have the Town of Lyons logo on it and have it not just be a generic Boulder sign. It's a Lion sign.
I agree with that. But do we want to add mandatory masks to the resolution? Trustee Lowe.
How would that then read? I mean, are we saying, would it be mandatory masks when entering or interacting with businesses? Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
Trustee Morgan, do you have any additions?
Trustee Lowell, I'm so glad you asked, because I have draft language that I can pull up and share on my screen. If this is something that we want to discuss tonight, I'm totally happy to do that.
Should we make a motion on the resolution as it is now and get a first and a second and then have discussion and then have an amendment? Is that not the way we should be doing this?
Yeah, that's.
If the board wants to take action on the resolution, there's no need to take action on it because it is extended through the 3rd. But if the board wants to change it tonight, then we should do it that way.
What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to extend the resolution 2020-88 in its current form for 8 weeks.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to extend resolution 2020-88 as is for 8 weeks.
And now I'd like to hear from Trustee Rogan. I think she may have some things to share with us.
Trustee Rogan.
I would like to make an amendment. And if you'll give me a second to pull up the document, I will, we can discuss what the mask order might look like.
All right.
I feel like I should be singing some hold music right now, but
Elevator music.
I don't think you really want me to.
There you go.
All right, so what you see on your screen right now is what's in the packet currently. And specifically, what it says is that businesses which are open are strongly encouraged to do the following things. So my proposed amendment has the first part of section 7 unchanged. You're encouraged to remain informed, et cetera, et cetera. But after that is when it changes. So businesses would be required to require the use of facial coverings for patrons and employees. And I'll scroll up a little bit so that you can see this whole list and you can read it. And I'll let you know that this is based on the Lafayette order. I certainly didn't make this up from scratch. It's plagiarizing for consistency. So you all let me know when you want me to scroll on down.
Why not banks and financial institutions? That seems really
Because
close.
you got to see their faces to make sure they're not robbing you.
Yep,
Oh.
that's correct. That's been a big issue recently. Facial coverings in banks is one of the other topics of much discussion among city attorneys.
Maybe the contact trace back.
Yeah, they had pawn shops in here too, but I figured we don't have a pawn shop, so we're good there.
I'm ready.
Okay. And then require the use of hand sanitizer for patrons and employees both before and after each transaction. Increase the frequency of cleaning and disinfection and for high touch surfaces to at least once an hour. And then there's the 6-foot distancing, and it would make it a requirement to display at each entrance to the business, the Town of Lyon sign that we're talking about.
Holly, I believe this is the Boulder County order that they're considering.
I don't know that it is.
It's based
on it.
It's pretty much the same. I can pull up the Boulder County order, have it up on my screen if you want.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the difference is if they added something more. But
so I think the difference is requiring facial coverings for patrons and employees versus encouraging. Is the difference.
Boulders requires it whenever you can't maintain 6 foot of distance.
I think this is yeah, I think it's good. I think this is it.
It's very similar. And you know, one thing that I get concerned about is so this talks about patrons and employees and places of public accommodation, and what I would like it to cover also is walk up and curbside. So places like the Oscar Blues walk-up window, places like that. And then the last part of this, this hasn't changed. They're strongly encouraged to notify the town if an employee tests positive for COVID-19. One thing I learned on the town hall call with Rep. Hooten was that if a business has 2 or more employees who test positive, they're required to let the county health department know. So that's news to me. And then just some definitions that I also plagiarized.
Has everybody had a chance to read this?
Yes.
If
Brandon,
so,
Brandon, can we make an amendment like this without it being in the public review first?
We can make any amendment we want to a resolution.
Sure.
I mean, so long as it's substantially related, and I think it is. I mean, I think everyone's on notice that there, the existing resolution already requires the wearing masks, or recommends it. This just makes it mandatory. But I mean, if it's the board's desire to wait until June 1st, we can certainly do that as well.
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the amendment.
We already have a motion on the table.
So we need a second for the.
We have a second.
Oh, okay, excuse me. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second regarding the amendments on Resolution 2020-88 per the screen.
The amendment, yeah. This would be just for the amendment.
Just for the amendment. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Oh, no discussion.
Well, there's some discussion.
Excuse
Yeah.
me. I'm sorry. Any discussion by the board? I don't have the screen full. So go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This does get stricter in Lyons than the county does, and that's dicey to do in several respects. There's a general question, I think, about whether you get better compliance with strong recommendations or a mandatory rule that a lot of people are going to resist. Given the lack of enforcement resources that we have, it's going to boil down to whether individual customers and businesses take responsibility for complying with this. And I don't think you can have enough patrolmen walking around handing them citations to make them comply. It's going to boil down to personal responsibility. I also think to some extent that doing this would be sort of swimming against the current. People are studying how to open things up and not impose more restrictions, partly because the whole purpose of these original emergency proclamations was really to flatten the curve, preserving hospital and EMS capacity and that type of thing. That's been done, but now we're in the post-flatten the curve period. I don't really think this is going to be enforceable, and I think it's hard to put the pressure on businesses to enforce it. That said, a lot of communities are doing it. Estes Park's doing it. If we're going to do it, I think there are a couple of things that need to happen with respect to this. And one is that it not become effective until the town has provided both the necessary signage to implement it, because I don't think we should put the burden on the businesses to verbally tell people that they have to wear a mask to come in their business. That's going to lead to confrontations and problems. So it shouldn't go into effect until the town has provided uniform signage that says you got to wear a mask to enter this business. And secondly, I've got one change that I would like to make on one of the sub things. The language from Lafayette's, I think, is better in one respect than what's in this proposal for Lyons. This says persons medically unable to wear a facial covering. Well, almost anybody is medically able to wear a facial covering, but Lafayette's language was different. It said something about like persons for whom a face covering would cause impairment due to an existing health condition. I like that much better. I think it gives a little more leeway for people who, for whatever reason, are having trouble breathing and couldn't wear a mask. So I know that would take a further amendment, but this is a real tough question, and it's going to be very hard to implement and enforce. If we're going to do it, let's only make it effective when we can provide when the town at its expense can provide to businesses the means to do it in terms of signage and PPE, and the town should pay for that. We shouldn't make businesses pay for requirements that the town's imposing on them.
Any further comments? Trustee Rogan?
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Browning on all counts. And I would ask that he make that language available, because I certainly couldn't type quickly enough here. And then also, I know I'd like to ask the board to comment on the first bullet, persons under the age of 3 years. Having not had small children, I feel like that was Lafayette's age. And so I'm wondering what the board thinks about that.
Bad idea.
Lafayette said 12 too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll change that to.
Yeah, the Boulder County order doesn't require any child aged 12 years or younger. And that children under the age of 3 should not wear a face mask.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what Lafayette reads. That persons 12 years of age or younger should not have to wear a face mask.
Yeah, the Boulder County order is concerned about suffocation for children under the age of 3. So that's the reason why it says they should not.
You know, so yeah, long ago I did have young children and try to keep a mask on a 2-year-old. Good luck with that.
I
It's
don't
just
have
as
a-
hard on a 16-year-old, Mark.
Yeah, yeah,
Are
true.
there any other comments by the board?
Should I make that substitution for paragraph 3 in the form of an amendment to the amendment? I hate doing that, but I think that's the proper way.
You get one amendment to an amendment, and that's it. So if you want to do it, now's your chance.
All right. The proposed substitute language, which is taken directly from Lafayette's languages, would be persons for whom a face covering would cause impairment due to an existing health condition. And that would substitute for the language persons medically unable to wear a facial covering.
Any other comments?
We
So
need
I
a second and then a
to vote on that.
Okay. Don't we need a?
I'll second.
We already have a motion and a second, and this
I
is.
think Trustee Waugh was trying to comment. I'm
Okay.
having a hard time seeing my strip of people here.
Yeah, I can't see them all because it's still on the screen and oh, I see, I can go down, I got you. Let's see. Trustee Waugh.
I'd like to applaud this effort and the intentions of this, but as I stated earlier in the meeting, I don't think that the town of Lyon should have any requirements that are more restrictive than the existing county requirements, and for that reason, I'll be voting against this amendment in its entirety.
Any other comments?
I think procedurally off a little. Oh.
I have.
Procedurally we're off a little bit. I think we have an amendment to an amendment and then an amendment and then the.
Correct. So we're going to vote on this amendment to the amendment, a vote on the amendment, then a vote on the whole shebang unless it's further amended.
Okay.
So the pending amendment was just to substitute that language in paragraph 3, which you could support or not and still vote for against the main.
Yep, this is just for that amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will second.
Go ahead.
I have a legal question.
Yep.
So if there's not a penalty included, Brandon, how do we enforce this starting tomorrow? If this were to pass?
One, I think there's probably going to be a future amendment based on when this would go into effect, but it would be under the general penalty of the town. If it were to be enforced that way, I don't think it's going to be practically, but if it were to be enforced, it would be under the general penalty of the town. And the town is authorized to do this pursuant to the general powers of municipalities and under the state health orders. We're allowed to make more restrictive regulations.
But I mean, this becomes required to, and if you, would that mean I enforce it tomorrow?
And Boulder, no, I don't think, I believe based on the discussion that's happened so far is that there's an intention to not make it immediately effective, which will have to come in a subsequent amendment 1. But,
That is correct.
But 2, Boulder County's is a $5,000 fine for not wearing a mask and no one's been fined. And so I think it kind of tells you how practical it is to enforce this.
Well, even if we have businesses who choose not to follow it, I mean, this is kind of some implications.
I think in that case, the town had in its discretion to decide whether or not to enforce this. And the town of Castle Rock originally had to make that decision here really recently. And in coordination with Tri-County Health and the state, they made such a decision to shut down a business because they refused to comply with both the state and the local health ordinance.
Any further discussion? I was under the impression that we weren't to implement this until we provided the businesses with the signage, the protective gear, and the
That's
Mayor,
correct.
Angela, I believe that's the intent, but there hasn't been a resolution yet on the floor to accomplish that. So
okay.
The procedure for this would be to vote on this amendment,
Okay.
vote on the other amendment, then when the whole thing is up for vote, there'll be a subsequent amendment to create that requirement.
Okay, so we'll vote on the current amendment per Mayor Pro Tem Browning's language from, I believe, Lafayette, sir.
Yes.
Madam
Which is
Clerk,
what again?
To substitute for persons medically unable to wear a facial covering, that's what the proposal reads now. And instead of that, you would say, persons for whom a face covering would cause impairment due to an existing health condition. And that makes it, I think, a broader exception.
Okay, I just want to make sure I know what I was voting on. Thank you.
Yep.
that's always a good
I'm
idea.
in.
Anybody else? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Nay.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas.
Aye.
The amendment passes 6-1. The next amendment was, I cannot recollect, I'm sorry.
It's for this entire proposal by Trustee Rogan as now amended.
All right, as stated by Counselor, is there any further discussion? I'll call for a vote.
Mayor
Madam Clerk?
Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Nay.
Trustee Miller,
Nay.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
and Trustee Caravas.
Nay.
The resolution passes 4-3.
That's the amendment.
The amendment, excuse me. So now we vote on the full resolution. Is that correct, Counselor?
Unless there's another amendment, it sounds like there's an amendment based on the time of implementation is what is has been suggested, but no one has made that amendment yet. So,
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Yes, I would like to further amend this resolution to provide that the section dealing with masks, which is section 7, I believe,
yes.
not to take effect until the town administrator, let's do it this way, has certified that signage has been provided to all local businesses and that sufficient personal protective equipment has been provided to all local businesses to implement this portion of the resolution.
Mayor Pro Tem, I suggest maybe be made available in case a business refuses to accept PPE or signage.
Sure. That's what I meant.
Do we have?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Trustee Watt wanted this resolution to be 8 weeks. Do we need to amend that then too? I guess so, huh?
Yeah, so we'll need a second on this one, and then if you want to make another.
Okay, so I'll second this.
We have a motion and a second for a further amendment as stated by Mayor Pro Tem Browning. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas.
Aye.
The amendment passes unanimously. Any further amendments?
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment
Okay.
to change it from 8 weeks to 3 weeks.
From today.
from today. Wait, what is that? That'd be the 15th of June, I believe. 15th of the meeting of June 15th. Revisit.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second to amend the resolution per Trustee Miller's language. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
I'm in support of what Trustee Miller's trying to do, but I think the problem would be that if you only have this resolution in effect for 3 weeks, it may expire before it's even effective because we're not sure the signage and PPE and so forth will be effective. If we could do that within 3 weeks of its effective date, I think that might be.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
I'll take it.
From the effective date, okay.
So to understand the language and the intent of that further amendment, Mayor Pro Tem Browning, could you explain that to me one more time?
Yeah, so because this mask requirement would not become effective until we had the signage and the PPE available, if we only put just 3 weeks on it, then it might expire before it was ever effective. Doesn't make any sense. But if we put when it becomes effective based upon a certification that from the town administrator that the signage and the PPE has become available, then it expires in 3 weeks unless we extend it. So once this becomes effective and you have a mask requirement, it would be in effect for 3 weeks. And then we would need to look at it and see, is it working, not working? Do we want to extend it, end it, whatever? You know, basically be a 3-week trial period once it becomes effective.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown, I think the only issue with that is what is the effect on the rest of the order. So, you know, the previous amendment that was made was just for the mask.
We should just make it then section 7. I'm not sure how you do that.
So I think maybe the whole resolution as a whole is effective for 8 weeks, but the piece concerning masks specifically has a sunset on it.
Yeah, that's Trustee Miller.
I don't necessarily think that the whole resolution should even be 8 weeks, honestly. I think we need to wait and see what the next month shows us.
And I think maybe if it makes it easier, the other option too is make it 3 weeks. We have the meeting on the 15th. We decide then whether to extend or not, whether or not this thing's in effect or not. The mask part specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so do we need to rephrase the amendment?
Wendy's amendment now was to go from 8 weeks to June 15th, which I think we just all agreed to. Or am I confused?
That's right.
I think
Is
that's
that right?
so
Okay, so no friendly amendment then, correct?
no friendly amendment was withdrawn.
Okay. So any further discussion? Call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
and Trustee Carabas.
Aye.
The amendment passes unanimously. Any further amendments? Oh, good. We get to vote on resolution 2020-88 as amended several times. Any further discussion? Is there a motion to
Yes, there is a motion and a
is there a
second.
motion on the table?
Yes,
There
sir.
is.
Okay. Call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Nay.
Trustee Miller,
Um, I'm going to say nay.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
and Trustee Caravas.
Nay.
Resolution 2020-88 passes by a vote of 4-3. I'll certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
and Trustee Caravas.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much for the
Kingsley.
guidance.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Dolores, I made you the host.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly, for everything.